So what we want to do is cultivate a capacity for kindness. So, close your eyes. Take a few moments to breathe in and breathe out. So what we want to do is cultivate a capacity for kindness. So, close your eyes. Take a few moments to breathe in and breathe out. So what we want to do is cultivate cultivate a capacity for kindness. So, close your eyes. Take a few moments.
Alrighty, chat, let's get started. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. Hopefully a little bit more of the latter today instead of the former. So today we're going to be doing a Am I the Asshole stream. So we're going to have people calling in from our community and we get to kind of weigh in on their situation and whether they did something right or wrong. So generally speaking, on stream, we're not really about passing judgment, right? So we're like all about compassion and acceptance and this kind of stuff. But I think that sometimes, like, you know, judgment isn't evil. Like, sometimes judgment should be used. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but like in our coaching program, for example, people think that the purpose of like a coaching relationship is to create a non-judgmental space. And that may be true in a therapy relationship where the therapist isn't really there to pass judgment. But actually what we want to do for coaches, and this is part of what I think is different about coaching versus therapy, is that what we want is authenticity, presence, and compassion. So what we ask our coaches to do and really bring to the table is authenticity and compassion, not non-judgmentalness. And you may say, like, wait, hold on a second, but why isn't that? Isn't like judgment evil? Well, it's like, no, actually. Judgment is a tool just like everything else. And we'd hope, and some of the best things that we've seen from, client satisfaction is when coaches actually sometimes will pass a judgment. Sometimes they'll be like, hey, I think you kind of made a mistake here. You made a commitment and you're not holding yourself accountable. Like, you know, like there is a part of this that is your fault. There is a part of this that you should accept responsibility for, and to do so in a compassionate way. So we don't want to blame people, right? But we also want to like acknowledge that actually you could have done something different in this situation. And what we actually tend to find is that by holding people accountable with compassion, like being authentic, if you really don't think they screwed up, then, you know, you don't say that, but to really combine authenticity and compassion and sort of hold people accountability and sometimes pass judgments on what's good and what's bad is actually what leads to good outcomes. So today we're going to lean into that a little bit. We're going to try something else, right? So we're going to talk to some people in our community. We'll see how that goes. And we'll kind of do that in a second. Before we do that, I just want to pop on over to our Right in the Fields DLC. So Right in the Fields is our now, I think, 10-week community event. It was originally 6 weeks. That's all about understanding your emotions and sort of boosting your EQ. So it starts off by understanding your emotions, being able to reflect on things that have been emotionally charged for you, hopefully start the process of emotional processing, to be able to help you develop empathy, to regulate your own emotions. And right now, we've got something really cool, which is that if you look at part of what makes emotions difficult is sometimes we want to communicate with others, but our emotions get in the way of being able to effectively communicate with other people. So our comms check is the feature that we just launched. It's part of the DLC that actually like goes through the process of breaking down how to communicate with someone if you're feeling emotional. So, right, so we can say, like, I want to communicate with my parent, and I'm copying pasta just so I can show you all the next thing. But then we sort of, you know, what do I want to tell them? Like, so you're going to, like, start to articulate out ahead of time, okay, who is this person? What's our relationship? What do I want to tell them? I feel angry because they let me down as a parent, and I'm resentful because they didn't force me to study. And now I'm in this situation where I'm failing out of college. And what do you expect their reaction to be, right? So what's the reaction that you're expecting? How do you actually want them to react? I want them to own up to the mistakes they made, right? And then what would you say to them after they react that way? So like think about, okay, how am I going to respond? And this is where you're going to say, part of what I find frustrating is that you never take responsibility for mistakes that you've made. Hey, see if we actually write our real thing. Right? So, and then how do we feel about the whole situation? So it kind of walks you through the steps of why communicating, if you're feeling emotional, is difficult. And it turns out that this stuff seems to be helping people, right? Because like, is this actually helping people? Well, let's take a look. So we're going to take a quick look at testimonials, right? So this is great. It's communication prompts. Feels okay, man. And it's like, that's the testimonial, right? Welcome to the HG Discord and the internet generation, where people are like, oh, not some flowery testimonial. It's like, yeah, just having a communication prompt helps a lot. I haven't made a submission in a while, but I can confidently say that I'm much more in touch with my emotions now compared to when I first started to participate. Much lesser emotional suppression and more embracing for me. So a lot of times we'll get this question, how do I embrace my emotions? How do I accept? And this is where just if you work with your emotions for a while, like it'll be easier to accept them, notice them, things like that. It just kind of happens automatically, to be honest. It's interesting as someone who has grown a lot, and I would dare to say I could call myself emotionally stable, yet actually taking a second to be vulnerable with my emotions in a new way really opened my eyes. Thankful for the experience. And this is, I think, a really important point, because we tend to think that emotional work needs to be done for people who are falling apart, right? So if we think about like emotional work, we usually think about things like psychotherapy is like, oh, I need to work on my emotions. If your emotions are out of control, like you need to go see a therapist. It's a need. It's a problem that has to be fixed. But what research on EQ and emotional awareness has shown us is that the more emotionally aware you become, the better you are at life. The more productive you become, the easier it is to combat procrastination. There's all kinds of benefits. So part of what we want to do in this community is really emphasize that mental health is more than the treatment of mental illness. And even if you call yourself emotionally stable, and let's assume that you are, there's still a lot to learn about yourself. And this kind of aspect of mental health is more than mental illness is actually something that I kind of learned like studying to become a monk. And that's where there's this idea that growth and improving in a particular way doesn't have to be designed to fix a pathology. So that's exactly what the event is for. So great. We're happy to hear that. So been on this for 2 weeks now. It's never too late to start. I already noticed an improvement. My feelings are no longer overwhelming to the point where I have to turn to unhealthy vices for soothing. Wow, that's huge. That'll be transformative. I also wanted to kind of highlight this. I think the biggest change has happened at therapy, though. For months, all I did was talk nonstop, yet I felt stuck. But because I've been more in touch with my emotions, I became aware that I only talk because it's very uncomfortable and not to talk. Turns out my therapist knew this since I started, and he's been waiting for me to notice it too. Right? So this is where I both love and hate therapy when I see things like this. Because what I wonder is if this person didn't notice that, how many more months would therapy go on with this kind of thing happening? Thanks a lot to an anonymous gifter for all the gifted subs. We really appreciate it. And so this is what's also really cool is we consider like the way that we've developed our tools is to be quite complementary to therapy. And we say over and over and over again, this isn't a substitute for therapy, and it really isn't. And part of what we actually do in our coaching program is sometimes we'll help people get into therapy. But really what this kind of emphasizes is that even the skills that you use here can be helpful in something like psychotherapy. So like training your emotions on a daily or weekly basis will make psychotherapy actually more effective. And this is something that I kind of noticed sort of taking like a meditative approach is that I found that when I taught patients how to meditate, the quality of psychotherapy became a lot better. We were able to accomplish more within psychotherapy than we would without meditation. So these are just a couple of the testimonials. You know, there's a ton of them, and it seems like a lot of people are being helped, etc. We don't have to go over all of it, but just to say that, you know, if y'all are interested in a little bit more emotional awareness, developing emotional awareness, being able to regulate your emotions, understanding yourself better, that's why we really have these community events. It's kind of like the skills building component. And then like, there's like, you know, watching the stream, which is like informational. And then there's some amount of like doing reps, which is what I really love about the Right in the Feels event. It's like, if you actually want to do reps for your emotions, that's how you do it. And then in terms of really not just doing reps, but in terms of like really accomplishing a particular task or goal, that's why we have coaching and group coaching. So if y'all are really interested in like targeting a particular thing within yourself, because this is sort of the shortcoming of Right in the Feels, is we'll teach you how to exercise, but it won't be like towards a particular goal. So the benefits that you'll get from Right in the Feels may touch on all aspects of your life, but it's not like at the end of the event, a particular aspect of your life will be improved. The whole point of the coaching program is to actually help y'all make concrete and noticeable change in a direction that you want to go. Right? So if you're like, hey, this is my problem. I want to stop doing this. I want to stop procrastinating. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what kind of decisions I should make. Should I major in this? I'm tired of like living to try to satisfy the expectations of others. I want to start figuring out what I want from life, and I want to develop a plan to actually accomplish it. That's what our coaching program is for. And that'll be sort of tailored to the particular kind of person you are. That's why it's kind of individualized, right? So the Right in the Feels event is great, but it's also like for everybody. So it's sort of like generalized. And if you're really looking for a more personal experience where you want to tackle your problems, that's what coaching is for. Okay? All right, let me make sure that this is okay. So let's actually hop in to our Am I the Asshole? We're ready to roll. Let's go. Are we doing polls? Hello. And we're not showing faces today, right?
Yep.
Okay. Can you count to 10 for me?
Oh, me myself, or
Yeah.
cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Perfect.
8, 9, 10.
Cool. So what do you
Cool.
go by, my friend?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What do you go by? What do you want me to call you today?
Oh, call me James.
James? Welcome, James.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Hey.
So what's your situation?
Well, I was seeing a girl, and I was kind of a little bit stressed and annoyed because I didn't know where my boundary was between going to her place and not. At a time, I felt like I wanted her to kind of try push on our behalf. But we broke up recently. It was pretty rough, not gonna lie.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Thanks.
Is that it?
Oh, I don't know which situation you want me to explain, the push for change or how the breakup actually went.
Oh, well, so generally speaking, I think that... So what's your understanding of what we're doing today?
Am I the asshole?
Yes. So what... I mean, so far what I've heard is that you were in a relationship and y'all broke up. So I'm not seeing any asshole behavior there. Is there anything that you're concerned about that you may have done incorrectly?
Yeah. I feel guilty and I feel like the asshole even though she broke up with me.
And okay, so why don't you, can you tell me a little bit about what's your understanding of why she broke up with you?
So when I went to see her, I flew from Dublin to Croatia to see her. I was on pain medication for some sinus issues. Things were clear. I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then suddenly they got very, very bad very quickly. Um, I was like going through horrible headaches, stuff like that, stressing her out a lot.
How are you stressing
Um,
her out?
well, I could see that like she almost didn't know what to do. She was a bit overwhelmed. Um, there was a time in a restaurant where she got frustrated because I was about to faint. Yeah.
She was getting frustrated because you were about to faint. What made you want to faint? Or not made you want to, but what was causing your near fainting?
So I later found out that I was actually taking a bad reaction to the pain medication. I was told they didn't have a certain substance, they did, and that was causing me to feel faint, feel dizzy, slurred speech, terrible, terrible stuff. I was trying to ask for help, and she didn't really take me anywhere. And I saw her getting frustrated, and I felt guilty
What kind of help were you asking for?
to see a doctor.
I see. So you were asking her to help you see a doctor?
Yeah.
And what did she say?
The first time she called her mom to talk. Her mom was then talking to me like, "Do you need to see a doctor? Are you feeling okay?" And I was like, No, I don't know how I feel right now. It just feels bad." Um, yeah. I then got
And that
shouted at by her mom actually later that day.
you got what by her mom?
Her mom then started shouting at me and blaming me once my girlfriend went to the bathroom,
What was she shouting? What was she blaming you for? What was she saying?
saying like it was irresponsible of me to come. I shouldn't be playing with my girlfriend's or my ex's feelings. Like if I was sick, I should never have tried to come. What are you doing here? Like you're not strong enough, that sort of stuff.
What do you think about that?
I want to say it's like not true, but I still feel that guilt, like it is my fault.
And what do you think
Like
is
I
your
thought I
fault?
felt better. Well, like if I didn't get sick, if I took care of myself, maybe things would have been different. I thought I was okay, but I didn't know something like this could have happened.
Okay. And so what do you think is responsible for the way that you were feeling when you were in Croatia?
I
What do you
don't
think is
understand the
responsible
question,
for your
sorry.
sickness?
Physically or
How do you understand why you were sick in Croatia?
I mean, sorry, words are kind of catching me. I have feelings though, just not the words. They're hard.
That's fine. Take your time.
Guilt, shame, and then blaming myself. That's what comes up.
Okay. So I can notice that it's like when I ask you a question, what I'm sort of getting from you is that there's almost like this it almost feels to me like a geyser where there's like this fountain of like guilt and shame that's kind of dominating your mind when I ask you a question. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's kind of floating the space, to be honest.
Right? So I'll ask the question again because I think it's important to try to, it may not be possible, so no blame, but to try to kind of push past that. So my understanding is that you were ill when you visited your then girlfriend in Croatia, correct?
Yep.
And prior to going to Croatia, you were ill and then you had seen a doctor, presumably?
Yep.
And the doctor did what?
So the doctor said, "Hey, take these medication, this antibiotic, and this painkiller when you need it. If it clears up between this day, you're good to go.
Okay. So did the doctor tell you
Um,
not to travel to Croatia or anything like that?
One doctor said be cautious about it. The
Okay.
other doctor said if you're feeling good on that day, things have cleared, there should be no reason why you can't.
And how did you feel that day?
On the day I left, I almost felt fantastic. Like
Okay.
my nose was clear, there's no
So
head
would you
things.
say
I was
that
like,
you
oh,
followed the
this is great.
doctor's medical advice?
I say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like it to me, right? So if your doctor didn't say don't travel and they said be cautious about it, and if you're feeling good on the day you have to leave, then you're fine to go. Because if you take antibiotics and painkillers, and then when you got there, what stressed your girlfriend out?
So at first, I just kind of had like a pain in the head, and I was like, oh, I'll just take a painkiller, not realizing me taking the painkiller was going to cause the effects later. So I was kind of drowsy, not really present, trying to be. I kind of felt like I was like that kid being driven around in the backseat of your car, and you're like, okay, we have to take care of him now.
Okay. So you were ill, and what's your understanding of like what caused the way that you were behaving?
Well, now I know it was that bad reaction to the pain medication.
Okay. So, and then the mom starts yelling at you, right?
Yeah, that was after visiting
Okay.
a restaurant the first time.
Now,
Ugh.
earlier when you were first sharing the story, you said something about boundaries. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like 2 weeks probably before, um, there was a situation where me and my girlfriend or ex needed to talk about something important. But prior to that, her dad had decided I'm not welcome in their shared apartment. Um, I was finding that very difficult because we didn't have space to talk really about important things unless it was in a public cafe, in a shopping store. Yeah.
So what I'm confused. What is that? So but y'all are long distance, right?
No, actually, I was going to visit her while she was visiting family, but she does like live 2 hours away from me regularly.
I see. So I'm confused. So her dad was not okay. How old is she?
Uh, 20 something,
Okay.
and she pays for half the rent, half of everything in the apartment.
So y'all, but y'all don't live together.
No.
And so I'm confused. So the dad doesn't want you to visit her at her apartment?
Yep, I wasn't even allowed to pee in the house. Traveled 2.5 hours to get there and was told to go in a shopping center, and that was upsetting.
And so what was the way it sounded like you pushed a boundary.
Apparently so.
And what was the boundary that you pushed?
I don't know. My girlfriend wasn't very communicative. I tried asking what's going on. I was allowed to stay at her apartment before that, but something changed and she wouldn't tell me, and I never got to know.
And so this was a few weeks before you visited her in Croatia?
Yep.
And so who invited you to Croatia?
My girlfriend did.
Did she invite you?
Yeah, she said, hey, just come over. We can chill out, talk things through.
So I'm super confused. So you're living in Dublin and she lives 2 hours away?
No, I'm living, well, near Dublin that I can get to easily. She's living in the Dublin area.
I see. And so but does her family live in Dublin too, or she's living there on her own?
So her father lives in Dublin. Her mother lives in Croatia.
I see. Okay. And so you're not welcome. And when you say she pays half the rent, her dad pays the other half?
Exactly.
I see. Okay. So she lives with her dad. So you're not welcome in the roommate's house. But are you being invited by your girlfriend there?
At times I was, and then it just all shut off, basically. But I was invited to hang out adjacent to her apartment because her apartment is right next to the travel line and all that. Yeah.
Okay. So James, this is where, so what do you think here that, what do you think you did here that could be perceived as being an asshole?
In that context, I think
In
how I
any of these
brought up,
contexts?
I was. My mind went blank there.
Sorry for interrupting. I should have let you finish. I'll ask
No,
the question again.
it's
So
okay.
I like, what do you think you did wrong here? What do you think you're guilty of?
How I talked about it, maybe, or brought it up with my girlfriend, how I made her feel. Did I push something? I don't know. I feel like I did something wrong.
Okay, you feel like you did something. That's why we're asking these questions. Okay? So here's what I'm hearing, and you let me know if this makes sense to you or not. So I know this
Okay.
the situation seemed a little bit confusing, but it sounds like y'all both live in Ireland, right?
Yep.
And there's this with this first business of you used to be able to visit,
Yep.
but now her dad, who is also her roommate, which is weird, like
Yeah.
set some limits or boundaries on you being able to visit.
Yep.
Okay, so that's like one issue. And then you were invited by her, and then her dad is like, by the way, you can't use the bathroom. Like, what do you think about that?
Yep. I felt like I was treated like a dog, to be honest. Being told, no, go outside. Don't go in here.
So I'm going to ask the question again. I'm not concerned with how you feel in this moment. I'm going to ask you, what do you think about that?
Oh. I think I don't know what right words to use.
Okay, it's not about right words or wrong words. So let me, and I know I may be a little bit difficult right now, so I apologize for that, but I do think it's important.
It's okay.
Because if we're, so here's the key thing to understand. If we're the asshole or not doesn't depend on our feelings. Does that make sense? It depends on our actions.
Yeah, I can hear you say that, but it's not matching up with what's inside.
Perfect, right? So that's why we're doing this. Because oftentimes we think that our guilt determines whether we feel guilty or not, determines whether, like, that's how our mind tells us we did something wrong or didn't do something wrong. Does that make sense?
Same thing. I hear what you're saying. It just doesn't match.
Okay, so I'll try to, let me just kind of start from the top. So let's forget about the roommate situation for a second. Let's focus on the trip.
Yeah.
So if one person gets invited to visit someone else, and you go and you visit someone else, and that person becomes sick, ill, and has a medication reaction that was unexpected and is due to a doctor prescribing a medicine which we didn't know how you would react. So like the person followed the medical advice. They were told by the doctors, be cautious, take this medication, and if you feel well, you can go. And they do what the doctor says, and then they show up and they have a bad medication reaction.
Yeah.
I don't think that's their fault. Does that make sense?
I see where you're coming from.
So I'm going to say this as a doctor, not your doctor, but generally speaking, if I prescribe a medication to a patient of mine and they have a bad reaction, I don't blame them for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
right? So like there's one reaction called anaphylaxis, which is like when people can't breathe. Okay, it can be potentially fatal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of like an epinephrine pen or an EpiPen, but it's a really
my
scary.
family have to carry them.
Huh?
My family have to carry them
Yeah,
sometimes
so you're familiar
for
with
my
this.
cousin or
so if
stuff like
someone
that.
needs an
Yeah, very.
EpiPen, as a doctor, I'm not like, screw you, asshole. It's not the patient's fault if they have a medication reaction, right?
Yeah.
I don't blame someone for needing an EpiPen. It's actually quite absurd. And then the other thing is that, so I'm going to go ahead, I don't know what chat thinks, but I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think you really did anything wrong here. Like, because what I'm hearing is that you had a medical reaction that was unforeseen and, more importantly, unanticipatable. Because we didn't hear anything about like anyone expecting you to have this reaction. And that you traveled somewhere else, you were invited by someone and you were a guest of someone's. And you got sick. And then when you got sick,
Yeah.
her mom was like, you're weak. I don't know why you're here.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think getting sick is a sign of weakness, especially if it's a medication reaction. There are some sicknesses that you could conceivably blame people for. Like if you've been smoking for 40 years and you get lung cancer, like arguably you can blame someone for that. But I don't think a medication reaction is something that you can blame someone for. And so I'm not really hearing that you did anything out of line. In fact, what I would say is that it sounds like people invited you to be their guest. And then generally speaking, like I think it's like if I invite someone into my house and they get ill, I think it's reasonable for me to try to take care of them, right? Because that's what you do for guests in your home. You don't... Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if you have like a friend
So where
visiting you
does-
for Christmas and then they get
Yeah.
the flu or something and they're like, hey, can you take me to go see a doctor? What do you think the right move is?
Oh, doctor, immediately.
But hold on, James. What if you don't like them? What do you think the right move is there?
Doctor.
But you don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still important to take them to the doctor?
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So
So
I think
where does the mismatch come from?
I think the mismatch comes from somewhere along the way. I'm not quite sure why, but somewhere along the way, like people are blaming you for this and you're happy to take it. So what I'm noticing is that they're blaming you and you're feeling guilty, which is not a mismatch. Does that make sense? The problem here is that there should be a mismatch. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because her parents are blaming you and you're feeling guilty.
Yeah.
That's not a mismatch. Do you understand that?
Actually, I don't. Sorry.
So, like, if I blame someone, even if I'm wrong, forget about right or wrong for a second. If I blame someone, and even if they're not wrong, if they feel guilty and they apologize, do you get how there's, like, harmony in this situation? It may be incorrect, but I'm blaming someone and someone is happy to take the blame. That's what guilt is.
Okay.
You see
I
what
get
I'm
you.
saying? Like, you're feeling guilty and they're
No,
thinking
yeah.
you're an asshole, so, like, y'all are kind of okay with that. It's wrong, but there's agreement.
Oh, okay. I see.
You see what I'm saying? Like, just because everyone agrees doesn't mean that anyone is right. But what I'm kind of noticing here is that, like, you're feeling guilty and they're blaming you, and people who feel guilty can't push back against people who blame them. Does that make sense?
I get you.
What are you hearing, James? What are you understanding?
So someone feels guilty. That matches with someone blaming them.
Spot on.
So they don't push because
Absolutely.
there's the match.
Absolutely.
It's fit into place.
And if one person blames another person and the other person feels guilty, does that mean that a guilty person made a mistake?
Could it though?
It could. You're correct. It could. But it's not a definite yes. You get that?
That I do, yeah.
So I think the problem here is that, so first of all, I don't think you're the asshole unless we're like missing something. Like, unless you're showing up, like pressuring your girlfriend into going or things like that, then I think it's a whole different ballgame. So if we
No,
hear...
It was just...
Yeah?
Sorry, you were saying?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, it was just me turning up. I felt good on the first day. The second day I was starting to feel bad. I was just getting worried and stuff like that. The episode happened. I asked, hey, I need to see a doctor. Didn't get to see one. Then the mom was very, very harsh. I was overly stressed out. I didn't know what to do or think.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think you did anything wrong here. It sounds to me like, honestly, like you had a bad reaction to a medication. And then if anything, the one thing that sort of maybe makes sense to me is that maybe the reason you feel guilty is because your girlfriend is stuck between you and her parents. What do you think about that?
That is not something I thought about.
Right? So her parents clearly don't like you, but she does.
Yeah.
So I think what we're sort of seeing here... Huh?
Well, no, we're broken up now.
Yeah,
She cut it
ex-girlfriend.
off after,
But I think what we're kind of like, what I'm... And sometimes this happens where essentially like she's not able to set appropriate boundaries with her parents. So she wants you to come over, but she's not like, she can't go all in on that. And then, so you get pulled in and then they push you out. It's like, this is absurd, dude. If my roommate or my kids, if my kids invited someone over that I didn't like, I would still let them use the bathroom in my house.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't, I don't think, you know, I mean, I think if someone was invited to my house by someone else in my house, I would let them use the bathroom. Unless I was concerned about theft or some, you know, maybe some situations. But I want to say, like, even if there was a convicted felon who was invited to my house, I would let them use the toilet. Like, I wouldn't have them go down the, like, unless I had a plausible threat of them being behind closed doors and, you know, if they were going to, I don't know, like, flood the toilet. I can't think of a reasonable scenario in which I would not let someone use the bathroom. And like you said, you felt like you were treated like a dog, which is what you were treated like. I mean, I think the assholes here seem to be her parents. What do you think about that?
One parent, yeah, I can see.
Which
Definitely.
one?
The dad, for sure. The mom, I don't know if she said those things out of a place of anger or worry or something else.
I mean, whether it was anger or worry, this is where, like, so this is the other thing, James, like, it's possible that we're getting such a biased story from you that we're missing something here. But I don't think that this is where, like, it doesn't matter where she was coming from. You were ill, you had a medication reaction, they wouldn't take you to see a doctor? Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. I was just told to get on the plane and brought back to Ireland. Had to go to the doctor literally an hour after my flight. Ambulance, brain scans, all that stuff. It was horrifying.
Okay, so like that even reinforces the story. So if you're telling me you got urgent medical attention and a medical professional was so concerned that they scanned your brain, like...
Yeah, basically.
Right? Because like this is where the medical professional decides. It's not, you know, we just don't go around scanning people's brains. Chances are you got a CAT scan, which exposes you to some radiation. So we don't just order them willy-nilly. Right? We only really order them like when we need to. Because they're expensive and they irradiate you. So we don't want to just do it. So, I mean, it's a good test to run if people are concerned, but we just don't go around CAT scanning people. And so I think the biggest issue that I'm hearing here, James, is that somewhere along the way, like, I don't know if you've been in abusive dynamics before, but this sounds to me like sort of an abusive dynamic where people are blaming you and something about the way that you're mind thinks, like you accept that blame. But I'm not hearing that you did anything wrong here.
I just feel like it's, again, me kind of having a moment of weakness, I guess. Like, yeah, I
So
feel bad when I have those moments,
sure.
I guess.
And I mean, I think that kind of makes sense. In the sense that you're concerned about, you don't like feeling weak. Like, I can empathize with that, but I think this is where
No, it's
just
more
kind
so showing it.
huh?
So, oh, no, it's more so showing it or having to, like, let it out, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that's where like I can empathize with the feeling. But I think this is where I also don't think that I don't think I don't think that being ill is a sign of weakness. It can feel that way. But I mean, you got sick, dude.
Yeah, I got sick.
I don't think that makes you weak. I mean, you're welcome to disagree.
Sorry, I'm just reflecting.
Good. It's not something you should apologize for. Anything you want to add or any questions? I mean, so I think Twitch chat is pretty confident. 80% of people.
Oh, I haven't been checking Twitch. I forgot
Yeah,
we were
you
live,
shouldn't.
actually,
You
to be
shouldn't
honest.
check Twitch. But 82% of people don't
Grand.
think you're the asshole here. And my guess is that the rest of the people just think you're trolling. Or I think some of the people were. One person said yes, and I'm pretty sure they're trolling.
No, I wish, like, afterwards, I still can't read type correctly because I keep on making typos with stuff like that. It's a whole thing. But
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
don't think you're the asshole here, man.
brain stuff.
It sounds to me like you got sick, and it sounds like, your girlfriend was caught in a situation where she couldn't set appropriate boundaries and like advocate for getting you medical attention, which is bizarre. And
Yeah, I feel like kind of like I was there for her a little bit when she had stuff that, needed attention. But now I had that same or similar issues and it was like, oh, can't touch this. Okay, throw it away. Oh, break up with them. Okay, just get rid of them. Can't deal with it.
yeah, so that sounds brutal, dude.
It has been.
And I'm not really hearing much that I think is your fault. And this is where, it can hurt to break up with someone, but I think that like being in a relationship with someone who can't set boundaries to protect you from people in their lives, right? This isn't just parents. This is like things like exes and stuff like that. I don't think those relationships end up being very healthy. So if you like someone and you want someone if you want to be in a relationship with someone and you want that person to be in your life, you've got to be able to advocate for them and have them be in your life.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay, good. Concerned, mother, all that sort of stuff.
Well, we're concerned for you too, dude. But I don't think you're the asshole.
No, really, this whole community has just been like reaching out. I don't know where to put the feeling. Like, yeah, strangers coming out, helping, asking if I'm okay. It's wild.
Yeah, the community is great. Maybe they can
Yeah,
help you.
it really, really is.
Maybe they can help you learn what you're worth.
I don't think I know that, actually.
Yeah, I can tell. And that's okay. And so hang around for a while and we'll see if we can figure it out together. How does that sound?
I like that. Yeah.
Cool, man. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, next up.
Ready for next?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Can you count to 10 for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Perfect. And what do you go by, my friend?
So my post was like, am I an asshole for acting weird with my girlfriend? So I tell the story.
Yes.
Okay. So it was at a party, and I was drunk, and she was not. And at some point, we were together in the middle of the room, full of people, and she kissed me, and it was really nice. But after the kiss, I untied her hair, and I said something like, "Make me happy," and I left to do something else, grab a drink, or I don't remember. But I did this because I am really uncomfortable to show love affection in public. Like kissing in public, pretty uncomfortable for me. So to me, it was like out of my comfort zone, and I wanted her to do the same. So I untied. Yeah.
What do you mean by you wanted her to do the same? The same meaning what?
Same as getting out of the comfort zone.
I see. So you felt uncomfortable, and so you wanted to make her uncomfortable?
Somehow, I don't know if out of the comfort zone is uncomfortable, but yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay. All right. So then,
Yeah,
so
so
you pulled, you removed something from her hair.
yeah, that was tied, and
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
And then you left the room?
Yeah, but not really far away, just like a few meters away.
Okay.
But yeah, in my head, it was, when I'm drunk, everything seems more classy and just better,
Okay.
but it's not.
Alcohol does do that sometimes.
Yeah.
And so then what happened?
She didn't say anything during the party on the night, but later on, she told me she talked about it with her friend, and it was weird, and she didn't really like it, and it's something that make her decided to break up. So after a few times after this, we broke up.
When you say a few times after this, what does that mean? What were the times?
It's 2 weeks.
Okay. So and so you said you pulled something out of her hair. Like, did it hurt her in some way?
No, just no.
Just like removing like a clip or like a, a hair tie or something.
Yeah, because I think her hair are really beautiful, and I like it better untied.
Okay. And then what did you say?
Um, I said it in my foreign language, so it's not the same,
Yeah,
really, but
that's
it's like
fine.
you want the um you want the French. It's something like
Yeah.
make me happy or please me.
But what does that? Yeah, what is the French? Can you tell us in French?
Fais-moi plaisir.
Okay. And so what does that mean? Can you? I understand what the translation is, but what's like the tone of what that means?
It's like I I make her happy with accepting the kiss. So I expect her to do something to make me happy as well,
So
I
is it
guess.
like flirtatious?
Frustration.
So
Um,
so I mean, is it like a nice thing to say, or a mean thing to say, or a playful thing to
mm,
say?
Maybe a little bit playful. Depend on how do you mean it.
And
But
how did you mean it?
for me, yeah, it was a bit like a bit challenging, I guess.
Okay, was it sexual?
A little bit.
Okay. And what's your understanding of why she broke up with you?
There was some event like this that happened, and like a lot of event happened, and she didn't felt in love anymore, and so because there wasn't love anymore, I think she stopped to care about me and the relationship. So I think that's it.
So
She wasn't in love
she,
anymore.
she broke up with you because she fell out of love?
Yeah, I think.
Did she talk about this incident when y'all broke up?
Yeah.
What did she say?
She didn't say much about it, just what I said. Like she asked her friends about it, and she thought it was weird, and yeah, she didn't like it.
Okay. And what do you think about it?
I agree that it's weird. Uh, of course, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drunk, but it's not so bad, I think.
Help me understand why you wouldn't have done it if you weren't drunk.
Oh, because I am a little bit shy, so if I wasn't drunk, I'm not sure I would accept the kiss. And yeah, if it's too ballsy for me, maybe in front of people doing this.
I see. So accepting the
So
kiss you wouldn't have done. What about the words that you said and the pulling the stuff out of her hair?
yeah, this is what I was talking about. I wouldn't do this either.
Okay,
Like
so you
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
have
do
done
this.
any of it.
No,
So and
maybe.
do you, what do you think about it now that you're I'm presuming that you're not drunk right now. Now that you're
No.
you're no longer drunk, what do you think about what you did?
Yeah, just like I said, I think it's stupid. Like it's really weird. I mean, it's not something I would do.
What's weird
And
about it?
I, I don't know. It's just uncommon and not something she would expect me to do.
Okay. Um does so and how long were y'all dating?
6 months.
Okay. And had y'all talked about her hair before?
No, not really, but I think she knew that I liked her hair, but
Okay.
and I nothing particularly.
Okay. So and like I'm just not sure like what's normal in a relationship for kind of what stage you were at. So
Mm.
sometimes like it's okay for someone to like mess with or play with your hair, right? So like for example, I'm married and sometimes my wife messes with my hair. And that's like
Mhm.
okay in our relationship. I don't always like it, but it's something that we're okay with. Do you know if, like, I mean, is that something that y'all had done in terms of like,
I think, yeah, I think it would be okay if it wasn't in public, because we were kind of in the middle of the room, and yeah, it wasn't just playful. Like, it was after a kiss, and yeah, I think this is why it's weird.
okay,
But otherwise, it will be really okay to do this.
okay. So, and what do you think? Do you think that you were out of line?
A little bit, yeah.
In what way do you think you were out of line?
Because she didn't want her hair to be untied.
Did you know that?
She didn't. She didn't tell me, but I could. Somehow, I think I knew it. I mean, no, I didn't knew she didn't want to untie, but I mean, if they were tied, must be a reason.
Okay. And do you think that and how drunk were you?
Really pretty well. Like, to me, it's close to my limits.
Close to your limit of being drunk. So you were definitely drunk, but if you were more drunk, you would have been like sick kind of thing?
Maybe. Yeah, I was really, really drunk.
Okay. So, you know, I think so. Twitch chat voted 41% thinks that everyone here is the asshole. 33% think that you're the asshole. 25% don't think you're the asshole. What do you think?
I didn't understand. How many things I am a asshole?
The most people think that both you and your girlfriend are at fault. So everyone sucks.
Oh, okay.
40% of people think that everyone made mistakes. 30% of people think that you're the asshole. 20% of people don't think you're the asshole.
Okay.
What do you think?
So we are both...
33 and 25. What do you think?
So most people think we both are assholes.
Yes, that's the number one. And this is where, so here's my take, okay? So the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that if you were drunk, there is a decent chance that your memory of the situation is off in some way.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I'm going to kind of say is that, like, we've got to be careful here because you may have remembered things in a particular way. It could have been worse. It could have been better. Like, who knows? So I think if you're getting pretty drunk and you're like doing things that y'all don't normally do, I mean, that's what happens when people get drunk. But I don't think, and it kind of bothers me a little bit that you were like, I wouldn't have done this if I wasn't drunk. You know, so that kind of makes me wonder a little bit. But then as we tunnel down into that, it seems like the reason that you wouldn't have done it isn't that you think it's wrong. It's that you're shy. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
why I'm not sure. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that I think is really asshole-ish about this for you is that she made you uncomfortable and then you did something to make her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So like that I think is asshole. So is it justified? Maybe. Right? So if I call someone a nasty thing, are they justified in calling me a nasty thing? Maybe. But I mean, it sounds to me like you felt uncomfortable that she did something that you didn't really consent to or feel comfortable with. And so your response to that is, I'm going to do something that she doesn't like or doesn't make her comfortable. And that doesn't sound right to me. I think the other thing in terms of the mistake here is not necessarily in the behavior, but in the way that the aftermath of the occurrence. So the other kind of question here is, did she know that public displays of affection make you uncomfortable?
No, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. She didn't know.
She didn't know?
She doesn't know. No.
I mean, so this is where I think that like, I think the real tragedy here is that y'all didn't like talk about this. And when people say like communication is the foundation of a relationship, I think this is oftentimes people don't know what that means. What that means is that if your partner does something that makes you uncomfortable, the right way to handle it is not to make them feel uncomfortable, but to talk about it.
Yeah. But I think maybe there is another reason for me to act like this.
And what is that?
Maybe I thought that it was some kind of teasing to kiss me in public like this. And maybe it was just my answer to the teasing.
Sure. And so that's the thing, right? So sometimes in relationships, I don't think you're wrong there, that like sometimes in relationships, part of the natural progression of the relationship is to kind of like up the ante and enter into like uncomfortable spaces. The key thing though, I think, is that usually that needs to be done with like some amount of being on the same team, as opposed to like, I did this to you, so you're going to do it to me, or vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't sound to me like a horrible violation of consent, and maybe I'm wrong there, but like, if you're dating someone for 6 months, I think like playing with their hair, which is one way that you could perceive this, I think is like something that is probably okay. I mean, presuming that, presuming they haven't made it clear one way or the other. But the honest truth about relationships, and I think this is something that we kind of like, we don't really acknowledge this. I think consent is incredibly important, but most of the advances in relationships don't happen with explicit consent. So simple things like, for example, do you mind if I eat a French fry off of your plate? Like sometimes a lot of stuff happens in the comfort of relationships that happens kind of like subconsciously. And like, it's not like we ask for permission for every single thing. Is it okay if I kiss you? Like that's a good thing to ask consent for. Is it okay if I kiss you for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds? Do you have to ask for consent every time you kiss? Like generally speaking in relationships, we don't do that. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a certain amount of like navigating things forward. And that can absolutely get people into trouble. Don't get me wrong. I do think we should probably be having more conversations around consent, not less. But I think the real mistake here, the only two things that I really thought that one thing is that if she didn't know you didn't appreciate it being kissed in public and y'all have been dating for 6 months, then, I think if y'all kiss in private, at some point that starts to become public unless you lay a boundary for her. So had you laid some kind of boundary?
No.
So then I think the only real asshole thing that I think you kind of did here is that she made you feel uncomfortable. And based on what you're kind of sharing with us, there was a part of you that was like, she made me feel this way, so I'm going to make her feel this way. Whereas I can sort of get that, if there's a public display of affection, you can kind of be flirtatious. I don't know if you are familiar with that word in English.
Yeah.
And so this sounds to me like within the normal bounds of flirtation. Like if your partner kisses you in public, touching her hair in some way and making a suggestive comment, especially depending on the tone and stuff like that, may be completely acceptable. I'm not hearing something that was degrading or overtly sexual, but I don't understand the translation or the connotation or things like that. So, but I think really what I'm here, the only real thing, because I think what you tried to do in that moment is become a Chad for a second. Right? Like your girlfriend kisses you in public and you're like, Chad mode, baby. But it sounds like you're not really practiced at that, so it may have come off a little bit cringy and creepy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, that's unfortunately part of like, even Chads stumble from time to time on the road to Chadhood. But along the way, it's perfectly reasonable that as you're stumbling, you may be an asshole somewhere in there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think maybe my understanding about why I did this might be wrong. Like, I justify myself with saying that I did this to make her uncomfortable. But I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, like, because I was drunk and
Yeah.
I don't really know why I did this.
Yeah, so I mean, but like that's kind of the tricky thing. So I think the other mistake here is getting really drunk,
Yeah.
right? Which, like, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for your behavior when you're drunk. But I'm also not hearing that your your girlfriend's friends thought it was weird, but I'm not even hearing that she really found it to be like violating or anything like that.
A little bit, I think.
When you say you think, what do you base that on?
When she told me about it,
So what did she
yeah, I
say?
think I don't remember everything, but because she told her friends about it, I think it was something big for her.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So you know, I think it's kind of an edge case, but I definitely think there are things here that you could or should have done differently, like just to be on the safe side. But I mean, we're not, we're talking about removing some stuff out of someone's hair. Now, this is like what would cross over into asshole territory if she likes her hair a particular way and you like it a different way, and then you consistently turn her hair into something that you find enjoyable or like pleasing to look at as opposed to what her preference is. But that I'm also not hearing, because it's not like you guys had conversations about hairstyles and stuff. It sounds like you just tried something and it sort of didn't work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that's not something I will do.
So, and furthermore, the drunkenness, it's not like I wouldn't do it because I'm a moral person and when I become drunk, I'm immoral. It sounds like really the drunkenness removes the shyness, which, is.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of an edge case, but the real tragedies here, I think, is that you didn't really talk about it. And also that, there wasn't any kind of serious conversation afterward, which there probably should have been. And then probably like getting super drunk, like, doesn't help.
Yeah, I came to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Like,
So, my sense is you were probably a little bit of the asshole, but just a little bit. How does that sound to you?
yeah, I think I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the same.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Good luck to you, my friend.
Good luck to you too.
Ready for next?
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
Hello?
Hello, my friend. Can you count to 10 for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Perfect.
7, 6,
And-
6, 7. Anyway,
What do you go by?
my name is Gabriel,
Okay,
and
Gabriel.
I wanted to say a couple of words before we start. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
So thank you for having me on stream, and thanks for doing what you do here. I've actually learned a lot from you and integrated it into my life, and it's been going great.
Awesome, man. Can you tell us a little bit about
Um,
what you found useful and how you've integrated it?
Oh, sure. So the thing I found most useful, I think, was your attitude about learning stuff. So basically, just going into it thinking it's your only chance to learn it, and then just trying to become interested. Can I give an example on that? Because
Sure.
I have an idea. So I entered university like 3 times in my life, I think, because the first 2 times my parents told me, you gotta go, you gotta do it. They didn't explain why. They were just like, you gotta do it. That's how it's done. And I hated it. I quit both times. And then the third time, actually, some stuff happened in my life. So I was able to, just process things and enter on my own. And then at the same time, I found your stream and it kind of changed the way I was thinking about it. At first, I wanted the job basically, but then I started to become interested in the courses. I was like, okay, this is mad. Let's try to study it like it's my only chance. And so I just kind of got interested and liked it a lot. And it happened as well with many other things that I study, like construction working, for example. Um, you know, And there's just a lot of it. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much for sharing, Gabriel. Thank you for coming on today. And tell us a little bit about what's your situation and how you may be the asshole.
All right, so it's a bit deep, so I prepared a quick backstory, if it would be all right to read it.
Please.
Okay, so I want to start by saying that Am I the Asshole is like a good approximation of what I am feeling when I try to set boundaries with people. And I noticed it's been a recurring theme throughout my life. So growing up, I noticed that my parents basically had no idea how to raise a child or how to do stuff in general. They were kind of like, they grew up in communism and they just were told what to do, but then when that fell apart, they just were clueless about life. And they were working really hard, but they didn't get much out of it. So I started to notice that and try to tell them, like, maybe you guys shouldn't force me into doing this. Maybe we should like do a fair trade and I do this and you guys do this for me. And they were just like, no, you're the kid, you don't know anything. We are the parents, we know better. So, they had kind of destroyed all my self-confidence because in their eyes I was never right. And no matter how much I thought about something and prepared, they would just give me the same response, like I don't know. They just didn't consider it at all. So that was the first time when I tried to set boundaries and it didn't work at all, and I just felt weird. I felt like I was to blame for that. And then it also started happening with my friends. A lot of people that I grew up with tried to do basically whatever they wanted, like smoke or drink, and we were in middle school, and I was like, guys, that's not right. We shouldn't be doing these things. And they were like, you're a loser. You just don't get it. And so me having self-confidence issues didn't help at all. I just felt even worse. And then eventually in high school, the stuff just piled up a lot. And at one point, I just gave up. I was like, okay, maybe I should just do what's cool. And I started actually drinking a lot. And people started showing me respect for some reason because I could drink a lot at parties and I would break all the rules in school. And some of my childhood friends even said I was cool because I didn't give a shit, and they just kind of appreciated it for some reason. And actually, I didn't like what I was doing. I was actually kind of depressed and almost became an alcoholic. I would have to drink before I went to school. It was a mess. It was pretty horrible. And after 2 years of that, I guess the shame kind of built up and I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, okay, I can't do this. I quit. And my family situation was a mess at the time as well. Basically, my father left us and my mother died of cancer. So that sucked as well. And then for some reason, my mother's death was actually what kind of saved me because when she died, because my father left us, I inherited everything from my grandparents. And I started to be able to actually set boundaries with my father. And soon after, I started with my friends as well. I was like, Dad, I'm just kind of chill. I got money, I got whatever. And he didn't take it very well, but um, I just kind of went for it. I tried to become a pro player in League of Legends, but I guess my mindset wasn't very good, so I got banned for toxicity when I reached like Diamond 1, almost Masters. And then I tried a different approach. I went hiking into the mountains a lot, and I was thinking like I would either complete the hikes or die, and that kind of helped me somehow. Fortunately, I didn't die. And then I actually found your stream, and that helped me quite a lot because I just started learning more and I found out how my mind works and started exploring different things like meditating or taking in your advice, and trying to apply it to my life. And so right now I got a life that I would say is worth living, and I think I look pretty good and I'm healthy, and I got a lot of stuff going on for me. But I still feel like an asshole whenever I try to set boundaries with people, and especially my father. Whenever so I have two examples. Could I share them?
Please. It's
So
quite the
yeah.
life you've lived, by the way, Gabriel.
Yeah, it's a lot more than this. I tried to condense it in like 5 minutes, so I wouldn't take up the whole day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But it sounds like it's been quite the roller coaster.
Yeah, it's been pretty horrible at times. I somehow survived, I think by luck, but yeah, I'm here, so it's good.
I'd love to hear the
Uh,
examples.
all right. So my first one was me and my girlfriend are basically rebuilding my grandfather's house that I inherited, and we actually moved here, and we basically do all the construction work by ourselves when we can, because we're students, so we have a lot going on. But every time my father calls me, if he finds out I'm doing something, he's like trying to stop me and tells me I should just call someone with experience because I don't know what I'm doing and he can't afford to help me when I fail. And I always tell him like that, I understand that you're concerned, but I don't like the way you talk to me and I don't appreciate that you don't trust me. So I would like you to not call or visit me if you're gonna have the attitude. And then he gets very upset and says I never listened to him, and then it kind of turns into the narcissistic parent example you gave in a stream. And somehow I feel bad after that call, and it's exhausting as well. So yeah,
Okay.
I feel like the asshole for telling him to not make me feel bad. I don't know, it's weird.
Okay. What's the second example?
All right, so it's with my childhood friends that I've been in touch with since we were kids, and then um, some of them just haven't changed, and I try to set boundaries with them. I tell them that, guys, I can't be gaming at 10 p.m. because tomorrow I wake up at like 5 a.m. to go to uni and study and stuff, and they're like, you're a loser, uni doesn't matter. It just doesn't work. So I cut ties with them, and I feel kind of bad for that too, because I lost some of my only friends. I don't really have that many friends that I actively talk to. So yeah, I know it's right, and my girlfriend also was like, "Yeah, you should probably not speak with those people." And I still feel bad for some reason. I just don't know why.
Okay. So,
That's that's it, pretty much.
can I think for a second, Gabriel?
Yeah, sure. I said a lot, so yeah.
Okay. And what is it about setting? So you're working on the house. Have you
Yep.
ever remodeled a home before?
No, never. I mean, I did my apartment when my mother died, but that doesn't really count as a home. It's a whole different business.
Okay. And so your dad is concerned that you're going to screw it up.
Pretty much, yeah.
And could you screw it up?
Definitely. I mean, not really, because I take a lot of precautions and prepare a lot, and my girlfriend also prepares with me, so there is a chance, but I don't think it would happen.
How much? What percentage of the remodel have y'all completed?
Well, it's not a remodel, it's a renovation. So basically, we demolish and rebuild new. So it's a lot more complex than just remodeling. We did the roof so far, and now we're digging the trenches for the new pipes. We're gonna get water and stuff.
How did you learn how to do that?
I just Googled it. It's pretty simple. There's like, okay, can I give another example?
Sure.
So you know how you go into university and you got like a math class? I study electrical engineering, for example, so I do this all the time. I have a very complex subject that you know nothing about, and you just open YouTube. You're like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then it adds up. You make like a document, you read it 1,000 times, you refine it, you just draw conclusions, and you understand how things work. And then once you get it, you try to practice it, you fail, you learn, and so on. You just kind of small steps.
Okay. So, and so your dad, and then what your response to your dad is what exactly? So he says get someone more experienced to do it. And then what?
Yeah, that's what he said. He basically implies I don't know what I'm doing and I should stop.
Do you know what you're doing?
But yeah, I mean, kind of. I'm always learning, but
Yeah, kind of. I think kind of sounds like the right answer to me.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's
then
pretty.
and how do you then respond to your dad?
Okay, so I always tell him, at the beginning I was kind of mad because I didn't know how to actually talk to him. But after I learned about it, I now try to understand him, and I say just like this: I understand that you're worried, or I understand that you're frustrated, or whatever it might be. And then I say what I don't like about the way he talked to me. Like, I don't like that you don't trust me, or I don't like that he doesn't see the situation as it really is, because we're actually forced to do some of the renovation because of the government, and he's not willing to help with that, but he just expects us to do what he wants anyway. So sometimes he doesn't line up with reality. He just has expectations that I don't know where they're coming from. So I try to explain that to him, and then he becomes sad and everything goes wrong.
What do you mean
And
when
I
he
feel
says
bad.
he becomes sad and everything goes wrong? What does that look like?
Okay, so let's say you're my dad, and
Okay.
and you call me and you're like, son, you should stop. And I tell him, okay, dad, I understand you want me to stop, but and I would like to explain why I'm doing it. And then I explain why I'm doing it, etc. And then he tries a different approach. He's like, hey son, you should really get someone more experienced because you don't know what you're doing, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, dad, but I researched this for X amount of hours. I don't like that you're sticking to the same idea. Please try to see it from my point of view as well. And then when that doesn't work as well, he tries the third version. He's like, you never listen to me. You're doing this and that and this and that. I won't help you when you fail. And then,
Okay.
and then I feel bad.
What makes you feel bad?
Oh, I mean, I want to help him. I want to get along with my dad. I've seen like my friends' dads when I was in middle school. There was like this one friend who got along really well. They were like cooperating, trying to do stuff together, and it just makes me feel bad that I can't have that with my dad.
Okay. And what's your understanding of why you can't have it with your dad?
Well, he's just working a lot, and I honestly don't know. It's so complicated, man. He was like this ever since I grew up. He always worked, and he never really, I don't know what he didn't. He didn't really consider others' viewpoints, I guess. He just kind of worked and worked and worked and didn't care about others. And he got mad at my mom. He got mad at me. He, I don't know. He's not very reasonable when he's too stressed out from work, I guess.
Okay. It sounds to me like you're doing a really hard job to make an excuse for him.
Am I? Damn.
I mean, so Twitch chat, 84% of people don't think you're the asshole here. So I'm going to try to tell you what I'm hearing, Gabriel. So we're playing the I'm your dad game, right? So I'm going to pretend to be your dad. So Gabriel, sounds like you're renovating a house and you've never done it before and you're learning from YouTube tutorials.
Yep. Exactly.
It sounds like that could end in disaster.
I guess it could, yeah.
Do you think it's going to end in disaster?
Definitely not. I wouldn't have started it if I thought.
And I know that you used to be kind of a fuck up in school before, right? You've dropped out of school twice. And
Yep.
so I know that you struggled a lot. You were drinking a lot. You have a bad group of friends or had a bad group of friends. But you know what, son? It sounds to me like you've really turned your life around. You're back in school.
Wow.
It sounds like you're doing really well now. You've got a girlfriend. And I'm concerned that you could screw things up because you've never done this before. And as long as you're aware of that and you have a plan B for like if you do make mistakes, but you got to learn sometime. And you don't seem to me like you're the person that you used to be. And I sometimes wonder if you can if you're biting off more than you can chew, and maybe you can handle the renovation. But if you haven't screwed it up yet, good luck to you. And what's your plan B?
Wish that was my dad, to be honest.
So, I mean, I think this is it's kind of simple. Once again, unless we're like getting something very wrong here. So what I'm hearing is like, I asked you like, why is your dad the way that he is? Like, I asked, why can't you have the relationship that you want with your dad? And your first answers were he works so much. I don't think work enters into the equation. Like, what does that have to do with anything? So if it was work, it's like, why can't you have the relationship? Well, he's never around. I never get to see him. He, never takes me out for my birthday. He never calls me. Like, I've seen kids whose the reason they don't have relationships with their dad is because their dad works too much. That's not what this looks like to me. I've seen that. And it just looks different. It's like my dad is never around. I went to compete in my, you know, my national math championship and dad wasn't there. Like, that's what that looks like. Do you get that? It's like an absence of your dad.
Yeah, now I get it. It feels more like he did it on purpose, kind of. Like he could have done things differently for sure.
Right? So, and what I'm hearing is that he hasn't, first of all, acknowledged that you've changed, which sometimes it's, by the way, very hard for parents to do. Like, even to this day, like, my parents or people who are in the generation above me still don't quite process that I'm not like a 7-year-old kid. They'll still continue to treat me like a 7-year-old kid. And it's like,
That's been really frustrating for me too, because I got so many things right, and it feels like nothing counted for him. Nothing got saved in the memory.
yeah, that's a great way to put it, right? So and I think it requires work as a parent, which I'm not hearing that your dad is really doing. Right? So this is where, like, somewhere along the way, and this is also potentially cultural, where we just sort of assume that parents know more than their kids, and that once you inject semen into another human being and they get pregnant and they have a child, that somehow qualifies you to become a parent. But, like, becoming a parent requires way more learning than electrical engineering or even renovating a house. And what I tend to see sometimes, which is really sad, is that parents don't do that kind of learning. They don't realize that, like, oh, this is complicated. And so I don't think you're the asshole at all. I understand that you feel guilty, which I think is a reasonable thing to do. It's a reasonable feeling because, but I think there's all kinds of other feelings in there as well. Like, because you're trying to fix this relationship with your dad and he's not trying. He's just expecting random obedience from you. And you're not willing to give random obedience. And I think part of the reason you probably feel bad is because if you don't give a parent who expects random obedience, that creates the disharmony. And the reason that kids feel guilty in this situation is because you know that if you behaved differently, you could create harmony in the relationship. If you told him...
That's quite insightful, I'd say. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. So this is what happens a lot with parents, and like they'll do this to their kids where the kid knows, if I play into this unhealthy dynamic and feed the narcissism, then there'll be harmony in our relationship and there won't be negative emotions. The problem is that I think at this point, Gabriel, you've learned that that's wrong. And so now you have and this is what you said early, I feel like an asshole when I set boundaries with people. And that's a very common. Because when you set boundaries with people...
all the time.
Yeah, when you set boundaries with people, they don't like it. And then they feel negative emotion. And you feel like the asshole because your action results in them feeling negative emotion. Which normally, if you think about that, what are the other scenarios that my actions create negative emotion? Betrayal. Abuse, being mean, being callous, forgetting to pick someone up at the airport, saying nasty things. And so in our mind, there are so many actions that we can take that can create negative emotion for other people. And this is why setting boundaries can be hard, because our mind kind of gets confused because we don't really realize, hold on a second, I'm not actually creating the negative emotion in them. I'm just setting the boundary. They are, to a certain degree, responsible for the emotions that they experience. And the whole problem with growing up with a narcissistic parent is that the narcissistic parent conditions you to be responsible for their emotions. And it's a mess.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Right? So, but I don't think you're the asshole here. I understand why you feel guilty because your dad has taught you that if I'm unhappy, guess whose fault it is, Gabriel?
Right. So maybe that's why this kind of effect happens with other people as well. I have a very silly example, but I think it would show the point.
Sure.
Can I share it?
Sure.
So my girlfriend really likes kittens, and there's some kittens in the yard outside, and I wasn't really comfortable with them, especially when they climb on the bed and stuff like that. And then when I thought about telling her, like, maybe we should wait and don't really take them in the house and stuff like that, I just felt really bad. I felt like a huge asshole for saying that, so I didn't even say it. And it ended up being a whole mess where they came in the house, and then I got angry about it. And then we kind of talked it over, and she's awesome, and we understood what happened, but I avoided trying to set the boundary because I expected I would feel bad. I know, yeah.
Yeah, right? So that tells me that you've been conditioned to be responsible for other people's feelings. Right? That's why we have difficulty. And so now
I'm kind of thinking about it still.
Yeah, so another quick question I have for you. When you were like drinking and screwing up in high school, what was your dad disappointed in you?
For sure, yeah. He always told me, like, back in my day, at your age, I was in the army, I was working the fields, I was doing this and that.
Yeah.
I got only 10s in university.
Okay. So here's the other problem. So if you want to unravel this, there's one other thing I'll share with you is that, so the reason this can be a hard habit to kick is because so he was disappointed due to your actions, right?
Yep.
So the reason this is hard to kick is that in that moment, your actions create his disappointment. But the problem is in that situation, you were actually in the wrong. Does that make sense? And you knew you were in the wrong.
Yeah.
So then what happens is your brain like develops like a mathematical law. Oh yeah, my dad is disappointed in me and it is my fault because I am making mistakes. The problem is that once you arrive at that conclusion, you carry the conclusion forward. I don't know if that sort of makes sense. But
yeah,
like,
I get it.
Since he was right in the past and he was disappointed and you were actually being a disappointment, you sort of realize, oh, okay, like, yeah, I'm responsible for this. You really are responsible for his disappointment, right? Because if you weren't such a fuck up, then he wouldn't be disappointed. And that's actually kind of fair in that situation.
Yeah, that I get.
And then
I
you
understand.
carry that forward, which is if my dad is disappointed, it's my fault. Because it was certainly true back then. And just like we learn about gravity and how to brush our teeth and all kinds of other stuff when we're kids, we learn something about the laws of like human relationships and what I'm responsible for. The problem is sometimes those laws are wrong. So I don't think you're the asshole here. I think the other thing just about your friends is I can understand why you feel guilty for abandoning them, because that's actually what you're doing. But it sounds to me like they're trying to hold you back instead of, coming with you.
Well, I can confirm that I felt much better after not going on Discord with them. I would just go in there, bring my own ideas, and then feel bad, and it didn't work out.
So this is, I've struggled with this myself and to a certain degree still do. So I still have people on my Steam friends list from back when I was like a degenerate gamer. And then like I started to put my life together and they didn't. And I noticed that there was a gap growing between me and them. And some of them, we like worked it out to where they started putting their lives together and we actually helped each other out. But some of them, like, I got the sense in retrospect, I realized to a certain degree it was arrogance on my part. But honestly, a lot of it was like resentment on their part. Because I was doing what they themselves knew that they should do. And since we were all the same, right, we're all degenerates. And if one of us makes it, that sort of mean, and we're all just like, we're all equally smart, right? We're all like high MMR or high rank players. We're just degenerate gamers. And if one of us starts to succeed, then it means that like if one of us could save ourselves, it means all of us could have saved ourselves. And if I'm not saving myself, then I'm really at fault. It's really my fault. And sometimes that can be so hard to handle that they will actually try to sabotage you. Because if they can cause you to fail, it gives them license to fail.
I never thought about it like that. I can relate to the arrogance part though, because I always wish that, this person that I'm thinking about would just change and, try a little bit harder and do, just kind of work out more, start stop smoking and stuff like that, so he wouldn't die at 25. But yeah, it just didn't work. I tried to bring some positive vibes, and I got kicked out kind of, and then I just left.
Yeah, so I think that's where you got to be careful because sometimes they don't want to hear it. So I sort of like learned, but I think that like here's the thing. When you're a degenerate gamer, you're going to surround yourself with other degenerate gamers, and I don't think that those people quote unquote deserve to be abandoned or whatever, but like human beings grow and change. I'm not friends with the kids that I grew up who were my neighbors on the street. I had different friends in high school. We went our different ways. And so you grow and change. And a big part of like growing and changing is that some friends are going to grow and change with you and some friends aren't. And they'll grow and change in a different direction. And sometimes people stagnate. I think you should try to help them. But this last piece of advice I'll give you, don't take your positive energy in there unless they're open to it. Because that's just...
Yep, that's big. Yep.
Right? Which is like if they're, this is the kind of thing where like, I remember when I was like putting my life together, I went to a group of my gamer friends and I was like, hey, are y'all interested in like, maybe like trying to set some kind of like accountability or fitness goals? Like this is something I'm interested in. Who wants to, are y'all interested in this at all? And then some people will say yes and some people will say no and some people will start making fun of me.
Oh yeah, I got that a lot, the third version.
Yeah, and that it's like, okay, fine. So this person isn't ready for this? Totally fine. What do I want to do in my life? And as you kind of set your North Star and you move towards it, then people who support the kind of work that you do will show up. And a great example of this in your life is your girlfriend. Because it sounds like
true.
you're like,
I got super lucky.
I'm gonna renovate my house. And your girlfriend is like, let's go, bitch. Let's do it.
Exactly, yeah. I got really lucky with that one.
And so that's where hopefully like you'll open yourself up to like further relationships, but I'm not getting asshole here at all, and neither is chat.
I wasn't really like, I kind of knew there's no way I'm the asshole here, but I still felt like one, and I'm glad I kind of got an idea of why that happened.
Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing your story, Gabriel.
Thank you for having me again, and yeah, it's nice to listen to your stream when I'm doing work outside.
Yeah, cool, man.
I'll disconnect.
If it doesn't dox you and you feel comfortable with it, when your house is renovated, if you want to send a picture, upload a picture on Discord, I think that'd be hype. But only, if you feel comfortable with it from a privacy perspective. I think it would be really
sure,
cool
yeah.
to see what you've accomplished and like what's possible.
I'm actually saving a folder with progress pictures as well, so I might do that one day.
Yeah, cool. But only if you feel comfortable with it, okay? And definitely don't dox yourself, bro. But I think that the work that you're doing could be inspiring to people in our community.
Oh, that would be cool. Anyway, I'm not gonna sit here all day. See you guys later.
See ya. All right, we got one more? Maybe two? Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Can you count to 10 for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Perfect.
6, 7.
And what do
Okay.
you go by?
You can call me Manuel.
Manuel?
Manuel. It's German.
Manuel?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
And what's the scenario that you're in where you may be the asshole, Manuel?
Well, so I have a very good friend who I argue with a lot. And we argue a lot about what I believe to be kind of trivial topics, but he takes them very seriously a lot of the time. And like drags out the conversation just like to get an apology out of me or something. At least that's what I feel like. I don't know, like when he's wrong, and he accepts that he's wrong, he kind of keeps finding new reasons to continue arguing. And yeah, I don't know, I just I kind of try to change his way to debate because I think it's kind of toxic the way he does it. And like yeah, I don't know, it's just that he's not personally involved with the topics we're talking about. Like sometimes it's like political or some abstract like conversation. But for some reason he really takes them seriously. Yeah.
Okay, can you
And
give me an example of like an argument that y'all would have?
Okay. One that we recently had was in a group chat. We were like half talking, half jokingly talking about the World Cup, and that whole shebang. And like halfway through the conversation, he enters the conversation and like he's very serious and stuff, and criticizes me um, for not being serious, because it's a serious topic. Um, and yeah, he kind of got angry. And then after we kind of clarified that the discussion wasn't 100% serious, he argued that we should have made it clear from the very start, and got angry at us for that. Wait, let me look it up actually. Here it is. Yeah, then I kind of tried asking him why this is so important for him, and he just said that it's a very serious topic because like people get hurt and stuff. And then he asked me why I can't accept that he takes this stuff so serious. And I said that it often worsens my mood and stresses me out when he does this. But nonetheless, I kind of wondered if I'm the asshole for just like trying to change his behavior, because like who am I to judge what's right for him?
Why are you trying to change
But
his behavior?
um, well, first off, because it's stressing me out and some other friends of ours. Um,
What do you mean by
and
stressing you out? What does that look like?
um, well, sometimes these discussions get kind of, depending on the topic, a bit personal, or like uh, it's frustrating. Um, it always depends. But it's just not very nice to like always keep arguing about um very unimportant topics. Yeah, and I
Okay.
also feel like it's it it's just not making him more happy,
Okay.
you know.
So, are you trying to change, and how are you trying to change the way that he approaches these conversations?
Well, I kind of tried a few different approaches. In the beginning, I just that was like a year ago or something. I
Well,
just kept
let me
arguing
actually
with
just
him.
rephrase my question. What's the goal that you're trying to achieve? What would you want?
Um, I'd want him to like be more civil in these not civil, like less intense, I guess. Because like with other people I can talk about stuff like that without it being some weird debate, you know?
Okay, so it sounds like things turn into a debate.
Yes, very often.
And how does that happen?
I'm not sure. It's not always the same. One time I just stepped away from the conversation when I noticed that he wanted to get confrontational. But that just made it even worse because he felt like I was ignoring him, even though I just didn't want to engage in the conversation. And when I told him that, he kind of ignored it. And then we just had a lengthy, dragged out discussion for like 3 days or something, and it like kept weighing heavy on my mind. So yeah.
So let me just try to understand. So what do you think you could be doing in the wrong here?
Trying to force behavior onto him.
And the behavior you're trying to enforce is for him to be less intense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and ask Twitch chat based on the information we have so far. And while they're
All
kind of
right.
weighing in, let's just kind of think through this. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? Do you think what you're doing is okay, not okay?
I don't know. That's what I'm wondering about because I find myself kind of trying to change my friends sometimes because I feel like I know what's best for them. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I know that not everyone is like kind of ready for change or willing to change. But like when I see an unhealthy behavior in someone, I again kind of get the urge to change that, especially if it's something I've seen in myself.
Okay, so I think that's pretty insightful. So just to let you know what Twitch thinks. So Twitch chat thinks that 49% of people think you're not the asshole. 41% of people think that everyone sucks. And 10% of people think that you are the asshole. What do you think about that? So number 1 is no. Number 2, close second is everyone sucks here. Everyone's making mistakes. What do you think about that?
I would like lean more towards everyone sucks.
Yeah. So let's try to unpack this. So here's what I'm kind of reading into this. So this, by the way, is a problem that I'm seeing more and more and more. I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but group chats can become some of the most toxic places so fast. And one of the things that's really interesting is like we'll have friends, right? So I noticed people were kind of wondering, like, why are you even friends with this person? You want to, anyway, we're not even going to dive into this. So my point is going to be that you can be great friends with people and you can hang out in person for years and you can get into a group chat with your friends and it becomes this weird, like toxic cesspool, like very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too. Like in person, this kind of stuff happened. It also happens definitely, but a lot less.
So- Yeah. So I mean,
I think that's just because like a lot of stuff is missing. Like it's
Yep.
just
so there's
words
some
only.
there's something that's just very very like different about group chats. So but let's kind of dive into. I think you could be making mistakes. And there may be parts of this that are asshole-ish, but generally speaking, I think this is happening all over the place. And even if you are the asshole here, I don't really blame you for it. So this is what I'd say. The first thing is that, as you've kind of pointed out, it's not your place to change how someone else wants to communicate, right? And furthermore, like, it's not your place to change someone else's communication style if it stresses you out. I don't like, in fact, that's what I think is half of what's wrong in the world today, is that I don't like what you're doing, therefore you should stop. And there are reasonable cases where that's sort of the case, right? Whereas other people should stop their behavior because it bothers me. But now what's happened in our society is we've gotten so far down the line of, if I am unhappy, it's due to your behavior, therefore you should change your behavior. This is how we get stuff like, I'm getting married this week and my best friend has lost 50 pounds and damn him for making me look bad. I should uninvite him from my wedding because his losing weight is making me feel bad about myself. Right? So this is like something where we've really surrendered our own feelings to the behaviors of others, where there's definitely situations where people will try to make us feel bad, and in that case, they should stop the behavior, like abuse. But I think this is where you've got to be really careful, where if like you're getting stressed out because he brings a particular intensity to the conversation, it's not really your place to say he needs to change that, or for you to try to change it without his consent. You with me so far?
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think you've tried to address that in a couple of other ways as well, because you've also mentioned that you tried to not engage, which I think is like a step in the right direction, like, because you're like, okay, so if I don't like his intensity, I just don't have to participate. But this is where I think it's really kind of unfortunate, but because he's not letting you like step back.
Yeah, that's why I've also like tried some different methods. Like I've tried understanding why he does this. But then he just kind of says it comes across as condescending and as it comes across like an interrogation. I think maybe I'm just doing this kind of wrong.
Yeah, so you may be.
work
So
on that.
oftentimes, here's the problem. So here's just like, I'll give you a quick communication tip. So one of the things that's missing the most from our communication is something called reflective listening. So when I try to understand someone, it's natural for me to ask questions. But when I ask 5 questions in a row, it feels like an interrogation. So what you want to do is break up the questions with comments that demonstrate your understanding. So you can say, hey, like, can you help me understand why this is so serious to you? Oh, it's so serious to you because in the World Cup, like, this is a situation where, a particular group is imposing their view on the world on like other people, right? So you can say, like, you can reflect back what you heard them say. And if you do that, that will actually garner more understanding than asking a bunch of questions. Because I want you to like pay attention to the opposite, which is, okay, so if you ask another question, it's going to sound like you're digging, interrogating, or trying to like, catch them out. So if I ask you a question, hey, Manuel, what do you think you're doing wrong here? And then you say, well, this is what I think I'm doing wrong. And then I say, well, what do you think is wrong about that? And what do you think is wrong about that? And what do you think is wrong about that? And what do you think is wrong about that? If I keep on digging, it seems like I'm, looking for something or trying to catch you in a trap. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds a lot like what's happening.
Yeah, right. So we don't know these communication skills. You learn this like in therapy, But these are, I think, a big problem is that these are not skills that should be exclusively used in therapy. So now you have like classes at places like Harvard Business School where they teach this stuff to executives. You also have people like ourselves who have peer support programs where we try to teach it to everybody. And like communication skills and stuff like that. I've taught this to like coaches in esports. It just helps people to learn how to communicate effectively.
I think it would be very like valuable if you kind of tried teaching that to us.
Yeah. So, okay. You like now?
It doesn't have to be now. I just think
Yeah.
that
So
would be very...
we've got plans to teach you this stuff, right? So this is probably going to happen in 2023. But we can, I think if y'all are really interested in this, what y'all should do is really go to places like Ask a Coach or things like that. Like we have community events where we teach this kind of stuff. The other place that we actually very concretely teach it, where it's a requirement to participate, is in group coaching. So in group coaching is when we like literally will teach people how to communicate. And that's what's so confusing, because people come in and they're like, what am I doing here? And it's before you can even make progress, you've got to learn how to listen and you've got to learn how to speak. And then once you know how to listen and you know how to speak, then you can start to understand yourself better and understand other people. So the best thing that we've got right now is group coaching, but we'll probably do some kind of, we've been working on like something around communication for our community for a long time. Maybe that's going to be Dr. K's guide. Maybe it's going to be like a community event. We're not really sure. But we can also talk a little bit about it now. There are a couple of other things though I want to touch on. So one thing that I think is really important for group chats is scoping. So what is the purpose? Like what's the purpose of the group chat? Because I think one thing that happens in group chats is that people come in and out. So everyone's mood and tone is not the same, right? So if you think about like an in-person interaction and we're all hanging out together and we're joking around and one person makes a serious comment, we're all like together at every step of the communication. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the problem with group chats is that I could have read something about the World Cup that has me really, really angry. And then I come into the group chat and everyone else is exchanging memes. So I'm coming into this communication in a completely random way that is out of sync with everyone else. And then since it's a safe place, this is where my friends is where I toss out a communication, which is jarring. And then what happens is I toss out one thing and then like people are just coming and going and no one is like together in terms of like what we're doing here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And so what I've seen is like group chats, like it's bizarre. You can have wonderful friends and group chats will just fucking fall apart. Because like people just get angry at each other like all the time. It's like we're taking, and this is another big thing that I've noticed, is that the more that the group chat is linked to the internet, the worse it is. So when a group chat becomes sharing things on Twitter, it like goes downhill real fast. Because what we're doing is, if you think about Twitter, and I know this is beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now, but if we look at like things like Twitter, why is Twitter successful? It's successful because of emotional engagement. Which tweets do you see the most? Not just the ones that you agree with the most, but the ones that you disagree with the most, right? That's what gets spread around. So we're going to see like some kind of conservative person and some kind of liberal person, and the more extreme they are, the more people will look at it. And the tricky thing is if you're very extreme, you're going to get eyes like it's a win on both sides, even if people think you're an idiot. Because if you disagree with someone, you're like, how on earth is this person still alive? How is this person on Twitter? How is this person like even a thing? And what we're seeing is like polarization. And then what happens is instead of like a normal human conversation, like from 10,000 years ago, when we were all like hunter-gatherers, we'd be like hanging around a campfire. And we talk about whatever's happened in that day. And we're all just kind of chilling. That's the way our brains evolved. And now what we see is in group chats, the more that you link to Twitter, the more that you link to other places, which is, Twitter's not the only one here, so I'm not trying to call them out as a platform. I think it's just a good example of like, since Twitter is so focused in how it functions, it demonstrates this dynamic. But you see it on YouTube and TikTok and Twitch and everything else as well. And so what we're seeing is that like the more you let the internet into your group chat, the more it becomes like the internet and the less like y'all. And if you think about in-person interactions when you're hanging out with your friends, it's not like you guys are constantly referencing the internet, right? Like you guys are just talking to each other and kind of hanging out. So I think another thing that you can try doing is having a conversation around the scope and purpose of this group chat. Or do you want to separate out the group chats between like serious discussion and memes? And because I noticed this as well, like in my own group chats, and now like we've splintered off into other group chats where it's like one of our group chats is about the making of food and the playing of video games. And the other one is about like politics and what's going on in the world and like things like that. But I think that one of the biggest issues is that group chats aren't scoped. They're not boundaried or scoped at all. And we don't need to boundary or scope things in person because we're all kind of like swimming together. We're all like riding on the same waves. We're in the same boat. So the mood of everyone elevates together and then like it lowers together, right? But in group chats, like everyone is in their own corner of the ocean where one of us is riding high and someone else is riding low, and it like causes all kinds of problems. So, I mean, just to kind of summarize, I know I've been ranting at you for a while, but I think this is something where, you know, are you kind of an asshole? Maybe. But like, I don't blame you because I think this is something that's happening all over the place. And I think that, you know, it's like you seem to me more like a victim, and it's not necessarily your friend. I think both of y'all are like victims of like this dynamic of group chatting, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel so too. Do you think I should just, the next time he tries to initiate a discussion, I should just tell him that I'd rather discuss this stuff in person?
No, so
Would
I'm going to
that
give
be
you a great communication tip. There is one really important thing that you figured out and one colossal mistake. Okay? When he wants to talk about something is the exact wrong time to have a boundary call, like a boundary situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I want to talk about why the World Cup is serious. And then if you come back in that moment and say, why are we talking about serious things in this group chat? What you're actually doing is like devaluing what he's saying then and there. Does that make sense? Because you're shutting down the conversation he wants to have.
Yeah.
So the conversation about what's appropriate to talk about should not happen when someone is trying to have a conversation.
So when should it happen?
Any other time.
Uh-huh.
Right? So like any other time, except when he's bringing an issue up. That's the absolute worst time. So I think that when everyone is neutral, because if he's coming in pissed about something with his intensity, and you're like, hey, we shouldn't talk about this, like, what are you going to get? You're going to get his intensity.
Yeah.
So that's
sense.
where you've got to scope. The scoping conversation has to happen at any time but what you suggested, which is what feels natural, which is why we all fucking do it, which is why group chats are a mess.
Yeah, the thing is we like have different group chats for different purposes. Like one of them is for a project we're working on. And for some reason it always like gets mixed in with other stuff. I don't know, I should bring that up, I think.
Yeah, right. So you could say, hey, y'all, I've noticed that like we have 3 different group chats, but it seems like people talk about everything everywhere.
Yeah.
What do y'all want to do about this? So another thing that I'd strongly recommend, so here's like fixing your group chat 101, is instead of proposing a solution, start with an observation. And then ask other people, what do y'all think we should do about this? And so like what you want to do is instead of telling your friend what to do, give him the opportunity to offer suggestions. Get everyone involved in the decision-making process. And then you can just, and then you can do back and forth then, but like the whole point is that no one's emotionally charged. Hopefully they won't get that way. And then what you can do is make sure you reflect, right? So if he says, I think everything is fine the way that it is. And then you're like, well, why do you think it's fine? Because of this. Well, why do you think that? Because of this. Why do you think that? Then you're into interrogation mode. So then you want to say, okay, so I'm seeing that this person doesn't think that there's a problem and is comfortable with the communication. What do other people think? Right? And like give everyone a chance. And then what you can do is sort of like moderate the discussion. And like that's kind of, and if you really want to learn how to do this, you just sign up for group coaching because you'll see your coach do it and it can absolutely be learned. And so like this is where like you can kind of like get everyone's input and then kind of summarize for everybody. I'm hearing some people say this, some people say this, because you'll be amazed at what'll happen. Because your friend will say, you know what, we should stick to the different topics. We shouldn't talk about political stuff in our project chat. And then you can say, okay, great. Then you're going to ask your friend or everyone else, when someone brings an off-topic thing in, how do we respond to that person? What's the appropriate reaction when someone makes a mistake? And then everyone gets to lay it out. And the key thing there is you're debating people into giving you license to shut them down when they make the mistake. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so.
But they have to give you the license ahead of time. You can't make them give you the license when they've crossed the boundary. Does that make sense? And that's the biggest problem, is that we try to set boundaries and enforce boundaries when people have already crossed them. And that's the worst time to set a boundary. Sometimes it's necessary, but the whole point of a boundary is that a boundary is not to be crossed, which means it has to be laid ahead of time. So it all has to happen ahead of time.
Yeah, and I never really thought about it that way. It like makes so much sense.
I mean,
Definitely
I think you're
not
making mistakes, but I don't blame you for them, is my sense. And I think that your friend is making mistakes too. And I think this is the kind of thing where like you can't tighten what a conversation is supposed to be in the middle of it. Right? You have to set that down ahead of time. Which, by the way, like these are the kinds of skills, honestly, like when I work with people in esports, they don't understand this stuff. And this is why you have like, if you all have had any experiences like this, you'll have these 7-hour conversations with no conclusions because there's no boundary around the conversation. You just talk in circles for like days. And you see it in marriages too.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Definitely.
Right? So you need to scope out and yeah. Any questions or thoughts, Manuel?
Well, I wanted to say that I really appreciate what you're doing, and you've helped me so much with a lot of stuff I've been struggling with. So, yeah, thanks for that.
You're very welcome, man. Thank you very much for coming on today. I'm
Yeah,
sorry if I
gladly.
kind of ranted at you a little bit, but
No, it's fine.
I really think your case like stumbled into like something that's really bizarre that we don't even realize what's going on. Like group chats are just, they're a whole thing, man.
Yeah.
Take care.
Well, thanks for letting me on. Have a nice one.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay. Are we done or what's going on? Tech Teller.
We're done.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot for organizing it, dude.
Yeah, sure.
So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to just take a second to collect my thoughts. Because I feel like there's some summaries which can be had today. Okay. So let me ask y'all, chat. Like, I feel inspired to summarize some takeaways. What do y'all think are the top points that we should really try to like drive home from today's stream? Okay. Just Google it. Okay. All right. Um, all right, so all right. So let's talk about a couple of random things, all right? So I'm going to just I'm going to rant for a little bit and just get on my soapbox, okay? So let's talk a little bit about boundary setting and feeling guilty. So the first thing is that a lot of times when we set boundaries, when we try to set boundaries on people or for ourselves, they don't work, right? And why don't they work? It's because of the way that people react to our boundaries. So if I set a boundary on someone and they don't like it. So for example, if I, let's say I'm struggling with a particular relationship and I'm talking to one of my parents and I say, hey, I'm struggling in my relationship. And then the parent is like, yay, awesome. Break up with them, break up with them, break up with them. I don't like them. And then even if you're sort of struggling with it, but you're interested in fixing the relationship and your parent is not being supportive, or they're not being supportive in terms of a career decision or an academic decision or what you're majoring in or whatever. If sometimes people will sort of inject toxicity into your life for a particular thing. And then what happens is we try to set a boundary on it, right? We say, hey, if you're going to do this, I don't want to talk to you. And then what happens is when we lay that boundary with them, they will get very, very upset. And so when they get upset with us, because they'll say things like, oh, like, I'm your parent. I love you. I just think about you. I'm doing this because I have your best interests at heart. You're ruining your life by studying art instead of STEM. I'm doing it for you. Like everything that I'm saying, every time I tell you that you're going to fail at life and that you're making tons of mistakes and that you're not doing the right thing and that this person is going to destroy your life and they're going to break your heart. Every time we talk on the phone and I tell you all these kinds of things, I'm doing it because I love you, right? That's why I'm being so toxic. And the thing is, they're not even, there's actually like a side to that sort of makes sense, right? Because if your parent really does believe that this is the wrong person for you, they're going to try to warn you off at any moment. The challenge, though, is that at the end of the day, you're setting there's a toxic communication dynamic. You're setting a boundary with them, and then they're responding in a negative way. They make you feel guilty for setting a boundary or trying to impose some kind of limit. And then you're kind of screwed, right? Because what are your options? So either you set a boundary, induce some kind of reaction by them, some sort of like toxic explosion where they actually escalate. Because the second you set a boundary on someone, what do? Do they like respect it right away? No, they push, right? That's what human beings do. If you tell your teenage son or daughter to be home at 10 p.m., what time are they going to show up? They're going to show up at 10:30. They're going to show up at 11. It's what everyone does. So they're going to push your boundary. And then they're going to figure out, okay, what are the ways that I can push this boundary? What works and what doesn't work? And this is where we fall into a huge problem because as you hold the boundary, what the other person will do is escalate and escalate and escalate. They'll figure out, okay, how hard do I need to push to knock this person over? And so if I hold my boundary up to the 25%, I resist, and then 50%, and then they push at 75%, and then that wins, right? Then I sort of cave. Then something really tricky happens, because what you're actually doing is incentivizing them to push with more force. Because you can resist at 25 and you can resist at 50, but you can't resist at 75. You can't resist at 100. And if you want to understand what that looks like, I'm going to break up with you. If you break up with me, I'm going to kill myself, right? Straight to 100%. How dare you try to set a boundary with me? Bitch, do you know what I'm going to do if you try to push me out of your life? I will show you who's boss here. How dare you try to set a boundary with me? I'm going to kill myself. And then we'll see who's the winner and who's the loser. And so interestingly enough, when we set boundaries, sometimes we actually reinforce the wrong kind of behavior. Because as we resist, if they push a little, we resist. They push more, we resist. And then they push too much, and that's what works. So then what are you reinforcing? You're reinforcing pushing really hard. And this is what's really confusing for us, because we try to set boundaries, we try to set boundaries, and boy, do we get screwed, do we get knocked back, do we get pushed around? Like the more we try to set boundaries, it appears that the worse things get, which is exactly what happens. Now, another thing to understand about boundaries. Part of the reason that we feel guilty, if you feel like an asshole for setting a boundary, let's understand a little bit about why that is. So if you're in a relationship with someone, and this is especially true for people who are like narcissistic or even have a borderline personality structure, what we'll sort of see is that if I set a boundary, they're going to get pissed. And so what starts to happen is I start to realize maybe they'll feel hurt. They'll guilt trip me, right? I can't believe you're not talking to your dear old mom or dad. Oh my God, we just love you. We raised you. We've done everything for you. I made so many sacrifices. I had such a promising career, but then I got pregnant and I've sacrificed my life for you. Now you won't even call me every 4 hours. I've texted you 5 times and you haven't responded in 7 minutes. Don't you care about me anymore? Emotional guilt tripping. Some kind of negative emotion. And this is someone in your life, right? So presumably you care about them. So then you feel bad and you feel guilty and you feel like the asshole for not picking up the phone or not returning a text. Even though when you pick up the phone and you return the text, there's toxicity on the other end. And so what's going on here? Why do you feel guilty? It's because if you really think about it, the reason you feel guilty is because in a way you are responsible. Because whether that person feels loved or unloved depends on your behavior, right? Because if you call them, then they feel loved. Then they feel supported. And if you don't call them, they feel abandoned. They feel resentful. They feel hurt. They feel sad. They feel suicidal. And so now we understand why you feel guilty, because the way that they feel is actually controllable by your behaviors. So your actions to pick up the phone or not pick up the phone results in 2 very big differences. And so it sort of makes sense that we would feel guilty, because we know we have the keys, right? We can create emotion A or we can create emotion B. We can help this person feel at peace, or we can help this person, or we can let this person stew in chaos. And that's why we feel guilty, because at some point we tend to take responsibility for their feelings. We start to accept that if I behave in way A, they will feel this way. If I behave in way B, they will feel this way. So who's responsible for their feelings? I am. It's my behaviors that create these feelings. And how does that happen? That's because that's the way we get conditioned. So especially if you've grown up with a narcissistic parent, what they will do, because this is what narcissistic people do, is they will make you responsible for their feelings. Or it could be someone that you're dating, right? My suicidality depends on your availability. That's the rules of the game. And this is why it's so hard to set a boundary, is because we've been playing by those rules so far, right? And it starts out in such a gentle way. Oh my God, I'm dating this person. We've gone on 4 dates and they called me and they were feeling so terrible. And at 11 p.m., I got this phone call and we stayed up all night talking through their problems for 6 hours. And I was exhausted the next day. But man, did I feel great about myself. I had to go to class and I didn't sleep all night, but I helped another human being and they're hot, you know? And so it makes me feel good because I'm really helping someone. Great. We got so much closer. The relationship is so much stronger because we had the 6-hour talk at 11 p.m. And it doesn't occur to you to say, hey, I've got class in the morning, right? Can we talk about this tomorrow as soon as I'm done with class? You don't set a boundary then, right? You don't set a boundary. You let them, because it's a one-time thing. A week goes by, you get a call at 11:30. I'm in crisis. And then if you're like, oh man, like, sorry, I'm busy. What? Okay, fine, whatever. If you don't have time for me, whatever, fine, bye. And then you get the silent treatment, you get the passive aggressive, you get the attitude, you feel guilty, you apologize, right? Okay, so everything is okay, fine. And then get a call at midnight. What are you gonna do now? Huh, bitch? You gonna be there for me? Or do I have to give you the passive aggressive treatment again? Did you learn your lesson? Or are you gonna be there for me this time? Which one? And so if you try to lay a limit, they escalate. And then suddenly, because you want to help this person, right? You're attracted to this person. Maybe you love them. So it starts out very simply, very innocently. In the case of parents, right? It's like, oh, like, look, I got an A on a test. And your parent is like, wow, you've made me proud. Great job. I'm so proud of you, son or daughter. You made me so proud being number one in the class. And then what does that happen? Okay, great, right? It's important to be proud of our kids. A year goes by, you're still number one. A year goes by, you're still number two. And now you suddenly become number two. And now your parent is like, I'm so disappointed in you. And then like something starts to happen. And then that goes on and on and on. And eventually you get an F. And then what does your parent say? How could you do this to me? Do you realize how this makes me look? That my son has failed? When my cousin is at the top of their class. How could you do this to me? So this is how these situations evolve, right? And especially as kids, like, we don't know how to set boundaries. Like, what? In fact, what we're taught is how to not set boundaries, how to become intertwined with our parents, depending on who your parents are. So this is tricky. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to set boundaries. And the reason it's really hard to set boundaries is because we don't really know how to do it, right? And when we do it, people don't respond well. They don't like it. So here are a couple tips. First thing is, don't set a boundary when you're trying to enforce a boundary. If your parent is calling you and is like, you find it to be stressful every time they call, you can't explain that to them when they call. You have to explain it at a completely other time, because if they need you for their emotions in the moment and you tell them, hey, this stresses me out, they're already emotionally needy. And if you don't give them what they need and on top of that, reject them beyond that, that's going to just send everything into a spiral. So you have to have these conversations around boundaries outside of the actual interaction. So sitting someone down and saying, hey, mom, dad, I love you very much. I'm struggling right now. I'm trying to fix this relationship. I really love this person. And I need y'all to like set some limits about how you talk to this person. I value your opinion. I value what y'all think, but I really do want to try to make this relationship work. And I'm trying to figure out, when every time you guys call me and you start spilling poison into my ear, it's too much for me. So you've got to set a boundary outside of enforcing a boundary. And then the enforcement comes later. Those two can't happen at the same time. And if y'all have struggled with like gaming and parents, you'll see this. Parents make this mistake too, where parents will run into your room at 10:30 and they'll say, no games after 10. You better stop right now. No games after 10. I told you, no games after 10. And then they impose random rules because you're playing. Right? And that's incredibly frustrating. How does it feel to have someone set a limit on you when you're way past the line? It feels incredibly unfair, incredibly frustrating. You didn't even know it was coming. Feels punitive, right? And so that's exactly how they're going to feel if you set a boundary on them when they need you. Second thing, as best as you can, if you set a boundary, stick with it. Stick with it in the moment. You can adjust it afterward, right? So we can have a conversation later where you can say, hey, yeah, I'm really sorry that you're really struggling right now. It's 11 p.m. I really have to go to bed. And then, you know, once you sort of like draw your line in the sand, you really need to pay attention to it. Because if you have to be careful about which behaviors you reinforce. Because if they escalate and then you cave, what you're going to be doing is entraining their escalated behavior. That's what you're going to get all the time. So it's totally fine to like adjust the boundary, but you should do so once again, not at the period of enforcement. So like, don't cave. Like once you draw your line in the sand, you stick with it unless things are truly drastic. The other thing there is that that's something that you need to be more cognizant of depending on the other person. So if other people are like, if it really is a one-time thing, then I think it's okay to like, you know, let it go. But the key thing to understand is ask yourself is like, the more that I compromise my boundaries or the more that I try to hold them, what does the other person do? Okay. And the third thing to understand is that if you have set a boundary and you feel like an asshole, the real question that you've got to ask yourself is, do I feel responsible for this person's feelings? And to really ask yourself, who is responsible for this person's feelings? And as you tunnel down into that, you may discover that you've fallen into a relationship where someone else's feelings and peace of mind depends on your behavior. And then you're screwed. They're screwed too. Because this is like, imagine what it's like to go through life not being in control of your own feelings and your peace of mind. For your peace of mind to be dependent on another person's behavior. You have no control over your destiny in that situation. It's not good for you. It's not even good for them. So really pay attention to how much of this boundary mess is because I feel responsible for this person's feelings. And then start to really think a little bit about like, okay, that's a whole other can of worms, but you really have to find out if that's the situation. Because if it is, that's the problem in and of itself. And for you to extricate yourself from responsibility for this person's feelings. So I know that boundaries are tricky, like it's really tricky because we don't get taught this stuff, right? This is honestly the kind of stuff that we should be taught. In our like college psychology classes, we get to learn about behaviorism and Pavlov's dogs. And that's like all really important stuff, but what we don't realize is we don't get taught, okay, the principle of like classical conditioning actually applies to boundary enforcement, and here's how it applies to your life. If you give in when someone escalates, what you're actually conditioning them to do is escalate. And that's why your life is an absolute mess. Questions? Okay. We're working on getting people to teach useful stuff, TBH. Was that helpful? Questions? Okay, let's look at a couple other things that we may be able to learn here. Okay. So here's another interesting thing. So I'd like to talk a little bit about friend groups and why sometimes ruining your life is something that your friends will cheer you on for, and why trying to put your life together is something that your friends will actually resent or try to sabotage. So, you know, I was talking to someone recently about when they were like in middle school, they were their friends started drinking and they didn't want to drink, right? And so what happens when you're like in middle school and your friends start using substances, whether it's pot or alcohol or whatever, and you don't engage in that, right? You're going to stay straight edge. You're going to be like a prude. You're not going to like do this stuff that's bad for everybody. Oh yeah, like, you know, what do? They make fun of you, right? They're not like, oh yeah, man, like I'm your friend. And as your friend, what I should do is respect your decisions and support you. That's not actually what your friends say. What your friends try to do is they try to ridicule you. They try to shame you into joining them. And then when you join them, like something weird happens, right? So like while you're staying sober, they're going to get on your case. Maybe get passive aggressive, maybe like straight up shame you into using. And once you join in, once you're like, yeah, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink. And like people are like, oh man, just have one drink, man. Have one drink. And then when you have that drink, what do they start doing? Yeah. Right? We did it. We got this person to drink. And then you get clapped on the back. Everyone starts cheering. Have another one, bro. Have another one, my dude. So as you start making mistakes, they cheer you on. And then something else happens, which is sometimes, I mean, this happened with me with gaming. So I had some friends and we were all degenerate gamers. And then I started like trying to put my life together, right? And what do they do when you try to put your life together? If they're good friends, what they're going to do is solid, really good. I'm going to actually like make sure that you stick with it. I'm going to make sure you study before we queue up. I want to make sure that you've done the work that you need to do. I'll take a break. Let's start in an hour. Why don't you just finish that assignment and we'll wait and we'll queue up together. That's what good friends should do. But what do? Nah, man, you can do it tomorrow. Don't worry about it, man. We're queuing up. Like, come on, man. Let's go. So as you start to put your life together, sometimes they'll even actively sabotage you. Right? And what the hell is going on here? And this is really unfortunate, but sometimes our friends, and it's not about them being friends or not, it's just human beings. What human beings hate the most is when we see someone else do something that we know we are capable of. Right? So if like an Olympic athlete wins a gold medal, that doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm not one of them. I'm me, and that person is over there. But if I see my friend who I game with start to eat healthy and like start to exercise, that's going to make me feel really bad because he's like me, right? We're the same. I'm just as smart. This guy is just as undisciplined of a noob as I am. And it can be even worse if they start getting into shape and I used to be more in shape. If they pass me up at any point, if they're the biggest loser in the group and they start to like do better and better and better, boy, is that going to be hard for me to handle. Because deep down within myself, I know that I should be able to do it. I could do it. If they can do it, I should be able to do it because we're the same. And so what we hate the most is when we see someone who we identify with, who's in our caliber, succeed in a way that we've always wanted to, but we can't, we resent them for it. And it brings out the worst resentment. And then what happens is your friends start sabotaging, right? If they give into it, that is. Because that's what we want to do. Because if this person succeeds, that means that I really should have been able to do it too. It makes me responsible for not succeeding. It makes me responsible for my failure. And so what's the simplest way to not be responsible for my own failure? It's to sabotage the other person, right? Because if I can take their success away, then I'm no different. We're all degenerate gamers again, right? None of us have made it. Then we can go on blaming the world. We can blame the educational system. We can blame our politicians. We can blame our parents. We can blame all kinds of things. But if all of those things are wrong in the world and my degenerate gamer friend puts his life together, well, hold on a second. Maybe that means that it's not the fault of the outside world. Maybe I'm not a hapless victim of my circumstances because how the fuck did this guy do it? And that's terrifying for us. So as we start to make mistakes in life, sometimes we want to pull people down with us. And most importantly, as people start to crawl out of the hole that they've dug themselves into, if you're not careful, your friends will drag you down. And if you're not careful, you will drag your friend down when they are trying to crawl out of the hole. And it's completely natural. Is it wrong? Absolutely. And so pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to your friends. Start to see what's going on here. Why are these people doing this? Why is this person encouraging me to drink or start getting high at the age of 14? What do they get? And if you're starting to put your life together and other people are sabotaging you, it can hurt, right? Because these are your friends. Y'all have been through thick and thin. Y'all been swimming around in the sewer together for the last 5 years. And then one day you say, I want to climb out of the sewer. And then they say, don't leave us. Or they say, how dare you? Or they say, you can't make it. Because if you can make it, that means they can make it. And if you can make it and they can make it, that means that the only ones that they have to blame are themselves. And so your success becomes the destruction of their worldview, becomes the destruction of the cocoon that they've created for themselves that absolves themselves of all responsibility. Your success means that they can blame no one but themselves, which is why you've got to be really careful. If you start to succeed and they don't actually support you in that way, you don't want to be arrogant about it, right? You don't want to go in and say, hey, look at me, like I'm putting my life together. Y'all are a bunch of noobs. But really pay attention to this, like what's going on. And if you notice those feelings within yourself, do something that's the complete antithesis to what you feel like doing, which is dragging them down, which is ask for help. Say, bro, I don't think you're that different from me, or girl, I don't think you're that different from me. We've both been struggling in life. How on earth are you able to do this? Can you help me? And if we did that, the world would be a very different place. Questions? Oh, this is great. So, Groath is saying, I don't have friends like that, but my own mind, my own thoughts discourage me from doing better for myself at the time. Such a good insight, right? So this complex can exist fully within you. And here's the problem with putting your life together. Is if you put your life together today, what that means is that you could have done it yesterday, or you could have done it a year ago, or you could have done it 2 years ago. And the thought that this was in your grasp the entire time and you have screwed up for 2 years, you didn't take advantage of this when you could have done it all along, that thought is so devastating in and of itself that it can actually tank your motivation and sabotage your attempt to succeed. The fact that you could have done it all along is enough to actually destroy the attempt. It's so bizarre. It's tricky. It's hard. So now the question is, how do I fight that thought? The answer is you don't fight it, because fighting that thought is what you've been doing this entire time. Fighting. I don't want to be me. Trying to kill the undisciplined part of myself. Trying to destroy the loser. Right? What you really need with that thought is, yeah, I kind of screwed up. And maybe I could have done it all this time. What you need in that moment is, just because I could have done it all this time, if I could have done it all this time, so be it. I made mistakes. What am I going to do today? Am I going to let the mistakes of the past inform my future? Because the tricky thing about that thought is you're about to take a step forward, and what does the thought do? It swivels you around. It says, no, don't look forward, look back. Instead of making progress, turn to regret. Right? Because here you are on the verge of success. And what does your mind do? Let's look to the past and regret. And the second you turn around, the second you stop moving forward, the second you start moving back. So oddly enough, don't fight the thought. Say, so be it. I did screw up. I could have done it a long time ago. I have lived the inefficient life. And I will continue to live the inefficient life. I'll be inefficient. But I'm going to move forward. Because the other thing that paralyzes us from moving forward is we have to be efficient. We have to make up for lost time. I've made so many mistakes in the future. Everything going forward has to be perfect. If I got an F, I can't do anything less than an A. So sometimes it's this desire for efficiency. It's the desire to be flawless in the past that keeps you from moving forward. And so be it. Honestly, that's the right way. As your mind tells you, you could have done this a long time ago. And that's when you say, so be it. You are correct. I could have done it a long time ago, and I screwed up. And today that changes. I can't fix the past, but I can certainly shape the present. And I hope to shape the future. So the right answer is not to fight the thought, not to conquer the thought, but simply to say, so be it. Okay. So someone's asking, like, do you think a personality test could be a good first step? I don't think it's a good first step. So I think that tests should be used to inform how, or sometimes what. But I think that, like, you know, tests have their place, but they're like really a tool, and you should really understand, like, okay, what am I doing this test for? So in medicine, we have this very important principle, which is that tests should be used to alter management. So a simple example of this is if a 90-year-old woman, you know, may have cancer, and if they got diagnosed with cancer, if they wouldn't do surgery anyway, there's no point in finding out whether they have cancer or not. Because if the test isn't going to change what you do, there's no point in ordering it. This is where a lot of people will say, but, like, you know, what about just knowing or just knowing? And there can be some value in that. But generally speaking, what people sometimes forget is that tests can be wrong and can be harmful. Right? That's the big thing that a lot of people in medicine don't understand, is that tests can be wrong. So there can be false positive rates or false negative rates. And so it can be very harmful to order a test and have a false positive. The test says, by the way, you've got cancer, even when you don't have cancer. And then think about what's the trajectory that you get on if you start getting treated for cancer if you don't have cancer. So I think that sometimes people will use, like, personality tests as kind of like a shotgun. Like, let me see what I can learn about myself. And there's some value in learning about yourself. But generally speaking, I would say that a personality test should be used to inform what to do. Right? So if you're trying to figure out, okay, like, I'm having trouble in my relationships. I don't understand why my relationships keep on getting screwed up. Then by all means, have some kind of evaluation about your attachment style, because that will inform what you're going to do about your relationships. So I would almost say that, like, the problem should be defined first before the personality test is used. And the personality test can help inform your solution. But I wouldn't really say it's the first step. It's a good question, Jasper Sloth. If the past doesn't exist, then I couldn't have done it yesterday, right? Yes and no. If the past doesn't exist, you couldn't have done it yesterday. So you're using a past tense verb for a past tense scenario, which lines up, right? Does that kind of make sense? You can't do it today if it's in the past, but you could have done it yesterday. So it's kind of like It's tricky. You could say the answer is yes. You could say the answer is no. Personally, what I see in that question is like sneakiness. What's the utility of the answer? You know, like there's like, what are you trying to do? Like, so if I say yes, you are correct. What does your mind do if I say, yeah, you couldn't have done it yesterday? Or if I say no, you could have done it yesterday, then what are you trying to do? Like, what's the purpose of the question? Right? And what does my answer do for today? So you've got to be careful about questions like that your mind asks. Maybe it's a good question. I'm not saying it isn't. I don't know what's in your mind, but I want you to pay attention. What is the answer to that question give you license to do? Thanks for the Prime sub, Groath. You're trying to trick me? Look, if your goal is to trick me, that's easy. If you want to try to trick me, you will succeed. It's not even close. Like, I don't stand a chance, my dudes. Because we're playing a different game. Like, my game here is not to win, it's to help. And if your game is to win, it's GG for me. All right, who are we rating, chat? Gots to go. I like streaming long on Fridays, by the way. It's fun. You guys want to raid OD Pixel? Let's do it. Riff Tracks or OD Pixel? Herb Derp Mia saying, upload this, please. I don't get to decide what gets uploaded and what doesn't. Chances are a lot of stuff does get uploaded, but this is where I'd say, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff here that deserves to live on the internet. I agree with you. The main question that I want to implore with y'all is, let's assume for a moment this is not going to get uploaded. What would you do? How would you act? And if this wasn't going, I mean, if this wasn't going to be uploaded, what would you do? If this was going to be uploaded, what would you do? Because sometimes when I hear people, I know I'm like this. If you're trying to hold on to it forever, you're going to let yourself forget in the moment. So if this was never going to be uploaded, what would you do? You would sit down. What I would do, when I've been in situations like this, I would pull out a pen and paper and I would furiously write down everything that I can to try to catch it, because I know it's gone forever. And if it's uploaded, let me boot up a game. So, I mean, seriously, we're going to upload a lot of this stuff, right? We're not going to not upload it to spite you. But I'd be super careful about what you let yourself get away with, because you're expecting us to be a safety net for your learning. Like, we've taken that responsibility to a certain degree, but I want y'all to start taking it too. All right, so Tough Dev is perfect. Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. This lecture will be recorded. GG nap time. That's right. So when I started, when I found out that lectures were going to be recorded, I stopped going. And the only person I hurt was myself. So the VOD should be available on Twitch. So let's head over to OD Pixel and see what's going on. Oh, if you hope to be able to share, that's a good reason to. My bad. Herp Derpia. I was reading into your statement too much of my own degenerate thought process. I didn't even think about helping someone else. So that's props to you, and that's an excellent reason to upload it. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'll definitely I've learned from your comment. So I greatly, greatly appreciate it. We're going to head over to OD Pixel. Have a good weekend, everybody.